Chapter 1301. Following that, Yu Lily's luck seemed to have turned on, and she couldn't stop winning. In the end, the women lost so much that they lost all their energy. Xiao Meng pushed the cards back and shouted, "I'm not playing anymore, I'm not playing anymore. Looks like we can't give away our good luck. Look, if we give away our good luck, we won't be lucky anymore." Yu Lily was embarrassed to lose and embarrassed to win. When she heard that, she said, "I was just lucky. Your skills are still better." "What skills? It's just a matter of luck. Forget it. It's too late now. I'll go home and pretend to make dinner. You guys have fun." Zhuang Yunhua was the first to bid farewell. Following that, the others also left one after another. Xiao Ziqing sighed and said, "Every time I lose, I blame it on my luck. It's obvious that I'm not as good as others." "Shut up. Don't speak. Get lost." His words drew the wrath of the crowd. Yu Lily couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Ziqing said proudly, "Let's fight again next time. We'll be going back too. Goodbye." Yu Lily quickly followed Xiao Ziqing out of the parking lot. Halfway there, Yu Lily remembered that she had forgotten to take the car keys. She must have left them upstairs. But Xiao Ziqing was already walking further and further away in her high heels. Yu Lily wanted to call out to her, but she couldn't. "What's it called? Auntie? Mom?" Yu Lily quickened her pace to catch up with him and shouted that. However, Xiao Ziqing did not stop and continued walking forward. Yu Lily shouted again, "That. Auntie, I forgot my car keys." The voice was crisp and clear, echoing in the empty parking lot. However, Xiao Ziqing didn't stop walking, as if she hadn't heard anything. Yu Lily was sure that her voice wasn't low. How could she not have heard it? Could it be that Ming's mother couldn't recognize his voice? At that thought, Yu Lily felt a little stifled. She chased after him and called out again, "That." Xiao Ziqing suddenly stopped in her tracks. She turned her head to look at Yu Lily and asked, "Who were you talking to along the way?" Yu Lily was taken aback for a moment before replying, "With you, follow me? Are you sure?" Xiao Ziqing looked a little angry. Yu Lily was a little confused. She didn't know how she had provoked this female overlord. Xiao Ziqing was annoyed and asked, "What did you call me?" Yu Lily was even more stunned. She whispered tentatively, "Mom, what?" Xiao Ziqing was a little impatient, "Speak louder." His tone was a little fierce, but Yu Lily was suddenly happy. She smiled and said, "The car key is upstairs. I forgot to take it." Xiao Ziqing snorted. "By the time you get it, the sun will be up." As she spoke, she threw a bunch of keys at him. "Let's go." Yu Lily took the key, and it was indeed that key. Xiao Ziqing turned around and walked away. Her back view was straight and beautiful, arrogant and unapproachable. However, Yu Lily's heart suddenly felt like it was about to fly, and she was filled with excitement that couldn't be contained. Looking at Xiao Ziqing's back, Yu Lily shouted happily, "She's coming." Most of the time, a person's mood was just because of a small matter. But to Yu Lily, this small matter was no small matter. After cooking and eating, Yu Lily helped Nanny Zhang with the laundry and couldn't wait to return to her room. Chapter 1302. Ming was a little confused by her sudden embrace. It was rare to see Yu Lily in such a good mood. Ming's mood improved as well, and his lips curled into a smile. Hugging the little woman in his arms, he asked softly, "What's wrong? Why are you so happy?" When Yu Lily heard the man's voice, she felt so happy that she could fly. She hugged Ming tighter and jumped excitedly. "Ming, let's go buy a lottery ticket. We'll definitely hit the jackpot today." Ming's smile deepened. He loosened his grip and asked, "What's wrong?" Yu Lily's smile was as bright as a flower. It was so gorgeous that no one could take their eyes off her. Mom brought me to meet her friend today. When O Ming heard this, his smile deepened. His pair of bright peach blossom eyes were filled with love, like sugar and honey, so thick that it could not melt. So fast? How did it feel? It was a little awkward at first, but later, I played mahjong with a few aunties and helped Mom win many rounds. Yu Lily said it like she was presenting a treasure. Her tone was coquettishly asking for praise, and it was full of pride. O Ming could clearly sense that when Yu Lily called Xiao Ziqing, her tone was no longer as repulsive as before. Just this afternoon, he was still addressing her as his mother. But now, he was directly addressing her as his mother. Such a small change was a good start. O Ming rubbed her hair and said with a smile, "Mom is in a good mood today. It's only the first day. It's great." Yu Lily's heart was filled with pride. She hugged O Ming's waist and said coquettishly, "It's not even 8 o'clock. Let's go watch a movie, shall we? You're in such a good mood." O Ming's smile deepened. He nodded and patted her butt. "All right, let's go." "Yeah." Yu Lily let go of him and entered the room. When O Ming saw how happy she was, his smile faded a little. They were newlyweds, and Xiao Ziqing had accepted Yu Lily. But, if she knew that Yu Lily was likely to be infertile, would she was a hidden danger. This matter was like a stone stuck in O Ming's heart. He couldn't let it go. He had to find a time to take Yu Lily for a checkup. Yi Yuyu had been lying in the hospital for several days. As expected, Shen Luo hadn't appeared since the second day she was hospitalized. There wasn't even a phone call. There is nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Yi Qianqian stayed by Yi Yuyu's side every day. Occasionally, she would go out to take a look. However, she spent most of her time in the hospital. Yi Qianqian was sitting next to him, reading a comic. She looked disinterested. Looking at Yi Qianqian's bored expression, Yi Yuyu felt a little guilty and called out, "Sister." Yi Qianqian suddenly looked up. Her first reaction was to ask, "Huh? Do you want some water?" Yi Yuyu shook her head. "Go back to work. I'll be discharged in a few days. It's not particularly serious." Yi Qianqian couldn't react for a moment. "Ah." Before she could think of an answer, she was interrupted by a male voice. Chapter 1303. He turned his head and saw a tall figure standing at the door. Li Jinan looked at the two women inside and slowly walked in. His eyes, as cold as the winter night, landed on Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu didn't expect him to suddenly appear. When she heard that, she immediately retorted, "I'm not a popular star. They won't be so free to pay attention to my trivial matters." Li Jinnan's eyes were calm as he slowly looked away and said, "You're not important, but the lonely swordsman is very popular now. The replacement Su Yingying has been very popular lately. You're the original supporting actress, and the focus is always on you. If word gets out that you're discriminating against one and favoring the other, how do you think it will affect the company? I wanted to be discharged myself. What does it have to do with the company?" Yi Yuyu looked at Li Jinan with dissatisfaction and said, "Although you're my boss, you can't be so overbearing and dictate my affairs, can you? I know my own body best. I want to be discharged. GM Li, this way, I can save you a lot of medical expenses." Li Jinnan's eyes turned slightly. His gaze was as calm as the moon, and he looked at her coldly. His voice was slow and firm, and he didn't allow for any disagreement. The company doesn't lack medical expenses. With that, he turned and walked away. "GM Li!" Yi Yuyu shouted. Li Jinan didn't stop walking. "GM Li, wait a minute." The figure had already left the ward and didn't stay for a moment. Yi Yuyu was even more annoyed. She screamed, "Li Jinan!" There was no response. Yi Yuyu was furious. She stared at the door and bit her lower lip. Yu, I think your boss is right. No matter what, you have to get better first. You're already suffering from an injury. If your health isn't good, how are you going to act in the future? How are you going to win back your position? Yi Qianqian said angrily. Yi Yu didn't reply, but the grievance in her heart was magnified. Accident. Injury. It wasn't easy to get the role, and she had to give it up just like that. The 2 episodes that had been filmed had to be cut out and replaced with Su Yingying's scenes. The Lonely Swordsman was adapted from a very popular novel. It had a huge readership, and the advertising was very strong. She had originally gotten the role of the second female lead because she had a bright personality and a positive image. Many new starlets were fighting over her. There were even quite a few veterans in the circle who wanted this role. She was well aware of the reason why she had fallen into her hands. It was that strange night where she lost her chastity, in exchange for a bright future. If word of this got out, it would be the unspoken rule that everyone talked about. She knew that very well, but what was done was done. There was no point in regretting it. If everything went well, it was very likely that she would officially increase her value and appear in the eyes of the public. But it was ruined, completely ruined. This fall had cut off all her chances. There would only be one such opportunity. Could it be that she had to go to the unspoken rules again in exchange for such an opportunity? Yi Yu pursed her lips. Her eyes were burning. She turned her head away and closed her eyes. In a low voice, she said, "Sis, I'm hungry. Help me buy some food." Yi Qianqian shut her mouth in embarrassment and said, "All right. Give me a moment." Chapter 1304. This man looked very young, very tall, very strong, and very well proportioned and handsome. She was carrying a fruit basket and a bunch of beautiful flowers. At first glance, he was bright and seemed to be about 25 or 26 years old. Who else could it be but Shunjilia? She looked at him in disbelief. Shunjilia? Anyone would be surprised to see Shunjilia in such a place at such a time. Shunjilia saw Yi Yu from afar. He raised his hand in greeting. "Hi. Why are you here?" "I'm here to see my sister-in-law," Shunjilia said with a bright smile. "She's in this ward, right?" "Yes." Yi Qianqian glanced behind him. "Shen Luo'an didn't come?" Speaking of Shen Luo'an, Shunjilia felt a little guilty. At the end of the day, Shen Luo'an was still Yi Yu's husband. During this period of time, Shen Luo'an had been staying at home to take care of Shen Manting. It was as if Shen Manting was his official wife. Shunjilia coughed lightly and said, "My brother has been quite busy recently. He can't leave the hospital, so he didn't come over. Now that I'm free, I'm here on behalf of my brother." Yi Qianqian sneered when she heard that. "Come here on behalf of your brother? You don't even take care of your own wife, so you send your younger brother to go through the motions. You're really a competent younger brother. Your older brother must be very happy, right?" Shunjilia was rendered speechless. He felt a little aggrieved and said, "I don't know either. I'm the younger brother, so I have to listen to whatever he says. I just sent Grandma back to the capital and rushed all the way here. Why are you scolding me? Can't we play properly?" Yi Qianqian also knew that she had gone overboard by venting her anger on him. She pouted and reached out to take the fruit basket from his hand. "Have you eaten?" "Not yet, I just got off the plane and came over." "You didn't even eat your in-flight meals?" "Oh please, is in-flight food for humans?" Shunjilia felt even more aggrieved. "Have you eaten already?" "No." "Go in, I'll go buy some food." "Okay, then I want 3 slices of eggplant, mu shu pork, and, you don't have to be picky. If you don't want to eat, then don't." Yi Qianqian carried the fruit basket into the house and rejected him without any hesitation. She turned around and left the house. Shenjilia chuckled and turned to look at Yi Yuyu, who was lying on the hospital bed. He called out, "Sister-in-law." When Yi Yuyu heard the way he addressed her, her lips curled into a self-deprecating smile. She looked at the young man in front of her, who looked a little like Shenluoan, and said, "Brother-in-law. Are you feeling better? Recently, I accompanied Grandma on a trip. I just sent Grandma back. It's all right. Thank you for coming to see me." Yi Yuyu smiled, but the smile looked forced no matter how you looked at it. Shenjilia's heart ached when he saw Yi Yuyu's pale and listless face. Shenjilia walked over and sat down on the stool beside her bed. He sighed and said, "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry." The sudden apology made Yi Yuyu turn her head away. She didn't understand what was going on. "Our Shen family owes you too much. Sister-in-law, I'm sorry." Yi Yuyu's eyes dimmed, and her smile faded. "Recently, my brother has been quite busy, so he didn't have time to visit you. However, he specifically told me to see how you're doing, and when he's done with his work, he'll come visit you." Chapter 1305. Shenjilia nodded his head. "Yes." Shenluoan's exact words were, "Check if she's dead for me." The last sentence was added by himself. But, seeing that Yi Yuyu's mood had obviously improved, it was worth it. So, no matter what, health is the top priority. You must take good care of yourself. When my brother is done with his work, you have to look better. Look at your face. TSK. It's like you've applied a layer of powder. It's pale and green. You look so haggard. Shenjilia looked at her face and shook his head. You look much uglier than before. Yi Yuyu instinctively touched her face. She finally felt a sense of crisis. Really? Why don't you take a look for yourself? Shenjilia took out his phone and turned on the front camera. He aimed it at her face and asked, "Is that right?" Yi Yuyu looked at herself in the mirror. The first thing she saw were the dark circles under her eyes, the bags under her eyes, the pale complexion, and the messy hair. During this period of time, she hadn't taken care of herself properly. Firstly, she wasn't in the mood. Secondly, it wasn't convenient. Yi Yuyu had never imagined that things would turn out this way. As she touched her face, Yi Yuyu's emotions became complicated. A week ago, it was still bright and beautiful. Now, in just a few days, it had become like this. How tragic, Yi Yuyu felt a little stifled. She handed the phone back without a word. With one look, Shenjilia could tell that she had taken his advice to heart. He quickly changed the topic and told her a lot of interesting things. However, Yi Yuyu had always been disinterested. When Yi Qianqian returned from buying food, she could feel the awkwardness in the air. Yi Qianqian had bought a lot of food because of the extra man. There was a lot of meat and seafood on the table. As soon as they were placed on the table, Shenjilia cheered them on. He opened the lunchboxes and began to eat heartily. Yi Qianqian unceremoniously smacked him with her chopsticks. "Have you washed your hands? Besides, this is for my sister. How dare you snatch food from a patient?" Shenjilia shrank back from the slap. He quickly replied, "I've showered. I'll peel the prawns for you, don't move." "I don't believe you. You must be trying to steal it. Am I that kind of person?" "Yes. You misunderstood." Shenjilia was speechless. The exchange of words was boring, but Yi Yuyu found it interesting. After the meal, Yi Yuyu's mood improved significantly. By the time she sent Shenjilia off, it was already past 9 in the evening. Yi Yuyu fell into a deep sleep. Yi Qianqian led Shenjilia to the hotel where she was staying to get a room. After that, they went their separate ways. After Shenjilia finished his shower, he couldn't calm down for a long time. After much consideration, she decided to call Shen Luo'an. The call was quickly connected. It seemed to be a little noisy on Shen Luo'an's side. There was the sound of moving music, lively chatter, and the coquettish voice of a woman. When Shenjilia heard the noise, he could roughly guess where that place was. After a moment of silence, she called out, "Brother." However, it wasn't Shen Luo'an's voice that appeared. It was Shen Manting. "Jilia, brother is drunk. I'm in the bar. Can you come and help me? I can't carry him alone." Shenjilia frowned. "I'm in H City. Are you going to have a drink with him?" "No, I was told to come here by the waiter. I didn't dare to tell my parents, so I came here secretly." Chapter 1306. Shen Manting was also helpless. She looked at Shen Luo'an, who was as drunk as a dead fish. "Jilia, see if there is a waiter nearby. Ask the waiter to help you." Shenjilia's voice was calm, but Shen Manting was even more flustered at this moment. She said, "Jilia, I'm a little scared. What if I'm recognized?" Hearing this, Shenjilia had a strange feeling in his heart. She's actually afraid of being recognized? What's there to be recognized? Is she afraid of being recognized as Shen Manting? Or was it that she was afraid of being recognized as the female lead of the rumor that had been spreading recently? Or is she afraid of being recognized as the heroine of the scandal? Recently, because of Yi Yuyu's injury, Shen Manting and Shen Luo'an's relationship was also dug up and talked about. It was a hot topic on Weibo. Some people said that Yi Yuyu made a mistake during the filming because her husband cheated on his sister-in-law. This Weibo was very popular. Many people were scolding Shen Manting, and many people said, "You'd better not let me see you, or you won't be able to return." Shen Manting was probably afraid of this. After thinking about it, Shenjilia comforted her, "Don't be afraid. Those keyboard warriors are nothing without their keyboards. Cover your face and ask someone to help send me back. But grandma is at home. If she finds out that we are drunk, I'm afraid." Shen Manting was also in trouble in the Shen family recently. Old Mrs. Shen's attitude toward her was getting colder and colder. She even scolded her recently. Shen Manting was suffering in her heart. She just needed to stay away from old Mrs. Shen. But if she took Shen Luo'an home like this, old Mrs. Shen couldn't not know, and there would be a great disaster. "Take me to the hotel first. Let's hide for the night." This was the only way. Shen Manting thought so too. She looked around and saw that there were many men and women coming and going. There were not many people paying attention to this side. Shen Manting tried to lift Shen Luo'an and whispered, "Brother, wake up. It's time to go home." Shen Luo'an didn't move, but in a drunken state, he reached out and put his hand on her. He should be able to hear her. Shen Manting exhaled softly and pulled up her turtleneck sweater to cover most of her face. She squatted down, lifted his arm, and wrapped it around her neck. She used all her strength to pull him to his feet. Shen Luo'an looked drunk, but he was still conscious. He reached out to hold her shoulders and rested his head on her neck. His breaths were filled with the strong smell of alcohol. His mouth was mumbling something, but it was hard to hear what he was saying. Shen Manting held him in her arms and dragged him away. She whispered, "Can you still walk? Be careful. Don't crush me. You're too heavy." Shen Luo'an lifted his body slightly, and his footsteps followed Shen Manting's. Although it wasn't very stable, it was still much easier than before. Shen Manting kept her head down throughout the journey. Shen Manting hailed a cab and carried him in after they found a hotel. When Shen Luo'an entered the room, he seemed to have sobered up. He muttered, "Take a shower." Shen Manting was infuriated by him and threw him onto the bed. She took off her coat and scolded him, "You're drunk and you still want to take a bath? Don't die in the bathroom." Chapter 1307. Suddenly, Shen Luo laughed and waved at her. He said gently, "Come here." Shen Manting was a little afraid to go over, but when she saw his smile, she still walked over. Shen Luo was a little annoyed. He simply reached out and pulled her over, holding her in his arms. Shen Manting subconsciously resisted. She struggled to break free from his restraint with both hands and shouted, "Shen Luo, please be more respectful." Hearing that, Shen Luo seemed to loosen his grip, and his breathing suddenly became a little rapid. Shen Luo fell back softly. He squinted his eyes and fell on the bed, smiling bitterly. However, he did not let go of Shen Manting's hand. He gently pulled and said again, "Come here." Shen Manting had never seen Shen Luo like this. Desolate and lonely, as if he was fragile and vulnerable. This Shen Luo was completely different from the Shen Luo who was usually superior and insufferably arrogant. Shen Manting felt a little sympathy from the bottom of her heart. The feeling of disgust she should have felt at this moment seemed to be defeated by his loneliness and fragility, and completely disappeared without a trace. Shen Manting stepped forward and gently held his hand. She leaned over and touched his face. His handsome face had been burned red by the alcohol, and it was very hot. Shen Manting looked at the man in front of her and gently lay down beside him. Her beautiful eyes stared at him. This was her first man, and also her elder brother. Originally, there should be nothing between him and her. He was already married, and he had a childhood sweetheart. She was supposed to be married to another man, but everything changed. From the beginning of his invasion, from the day she committed suicide, her life and his life began to be different. Shen Luo seemed to feel a warmth approaching in front of him. He leaned forward and opened his squinted eyes. He turned his body and easily pressed his body against hers. Shen Manting was caught off guard and screamed. Looking at the flushed face in front of her, her heart could not help but beat faster. Indescribable throbbing spread layer by layer. Shen Luo held her palm with one hand and rested his other hand on the side of her body. He lowered his head slightly and kissed her lips softly and tenderly. There was an indescribable electric current flowing through her smooth and tender lips that reeked of alcohol. Shen Manting couldn't tell what she was feeling, but it was a little uncomfortable and comfortable at the same time. She was so happy that she was infatuated with it. This was something she had never experienced when facing O Ming. This was something she had never experienced in front of Shen Luo. Shen Luo closed his eyes and kissed her gently. His lips moved down slowly and his Adam's apple bobbed as he whispered a name, Yu. Shen Manting felt as if something in her heart had shattered in an instant. She was caught off guard by the sound of a clang. The feeling of weightlessness in his heart was so empty that it almost suffocated him. Her lips, which reeked of alcohol, continued to move, but she was no longer as intoxicated as before. An indescribable discomfort instantly filled his heart. She raised her hand and pushed him away forcefully. A warm current overflowed from the bottom of her heart to her eyes. Even Shen Manting herself couldn't tell why, and her throat was choked with unbearable pain. Shen Luo was pushed so suddenly that he opened his eyes blankly and looked around. In a daze, he seemed to see a figure holding a bundle of clothes and walking away. Then, there was a sound. Chapter 1308. After watching a movie with O Ming, they went to have supper. By the time they got home, it was already past 11 p.m. The two of them tiptoed back home, afraid that they would wake up O Huijin and his wife. But when he got home, he found that he didn't have his keys with him. Of course, it was impossible for Yu Lily to have a key. For a moment, the two of them couldn't go in, and they didn't dare to ring the doorbell to wake them up. What should we do? Yu Lily looked at him and felt a little aggrieved. Today is only the first day. What if your mother has a problem with me again and says that I brought you everywhere? O Ming laughed and pinched her nose. How did it become my mother again? My mother is your mother. I won't be so petty. Besides, we just got married. Isn't it normal for newlyweds to go out on a date? Is it normal? Yu Lily thought about it and felt that it was not appropriate. This was the first time Yu Lily had stayed here. She had been running around on the first day. Yu Lily regretted it and said, "If I had known, I wouldn't have gone out. Why didn't you stop me just now?" Hearing this blame, Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Are you blaming me? It's your fault. It's all your fault. It's all your fault." Yu Lily pushed him away and looked at the closed door with a bitter face. "What should we do? How about we go home?" "Shoo. Listen." Ming pointed at the door. Sure enough, light footsteps could be heard from inside. Then, the door opened from the inside. Huajin was in his pajamas. He looked at the couple who had returned home late at night and sighed helplessly. "Don't come back so late next time. Your mother is still waiting for you." Yu Lily regretted it even more. She shrank her neck and did not dare to speak. He pulled his wife aside and replied, "Got it. It won't be so late next time. Let Mom go to bed first. Do you still need to sleep tonight?" Xiao Ziqing walked out and looked at the big clock in the living room. She said in a bad mood, "It'll take a long time to shower later. Go straight to sleep after you go in. Don't mess around. Get up early tomorrow, you hear? Don't mess around." These words, Yu Lily's face suddenly turned red. He lifted his head to look at Xiao Ziqing and realized that she was looking at him. It was obvious that these words were directed at him. Yu Lily's face became redder, and she nodded. "Got it." Xiao Ziqing also knew that girls were shy. Seeing her like this, she waved her hand and said, "Go to sleep. Oldo, let's go back too." "Yes, I'm coming," Huajin replied. He closed the door and walked inside. Ming looked at Xiao Ziqing's back and teased, "You guys are not allowed to mess around." Hearing this, Xiao Ziqing nearly choked on her saliva. Her face turned red as she coughed. Huajin was even more direct. He walked over to Ming and knocked him on the head. He warned, "Are you tired of living?" Ming clutched his head and scrunched up his face. Yu Lily wanted to laugh but didn't dare. She pursed her lips and blushed. Her shoulders trembled slightly as she pulled Ming inside. However, she clearly underestimated Ming's recklessness. Just as they were about to enter the hallway, Ming turned his head and seriously advised, "Staying up late is not good for your health. Come earlier tomorrow." Huajin was even more annoyed. He raised his hand in their direction. Chapter 1309. The next morning, Yu Lily woke up early. It was 6 in the morning. She had just changed into her sportswear when she heard a knock on the door. Xiao Ziqing had already put on her casual and beautiful sportswear. She looked healthy and energetic. When Yu Lily saw Xiao Ziqing in this state, she sighed in her heart. Fortunately, she had this habit. Otherwise, it would have been awkward. "Good morning, Mom." Yu Lily smiled naturally. There was no awkwardness in her greeting. When Xiao Ziqing heard that, she looked at her and replied, "Hurry up. We have to come back later to make breakfast. Auntie Zhang is off today, so I'm counting on you to make all 3 meals." Yu Lily's smile widened. Not only was there no resentment in her heart, but joy welled up from the bottom of her heart. She nodded her head and said, "All right." Seeing that she was willing to work without complaint and happy made Xiao Ziqing feel much better. But she didn't show it on her face. She turned and ran, saying, "Let's go." "Okay." Yu Lily followed closely behind. Her pace was neither fast nor slow. She kept up with Xiao Ziqing. The villa was located in the suburbs of Kingstown. Most of the people who lived there were the parents of older, wealthier people. Along the way, Xiao Ziqing met many familiar faces and greeted them. Many people's eyes fell on Yu Lily. Anyone who saw her would ask, "Who is that?" Xiao Ziqing would always smile and say, "My Xiao's wife." She didn't say that she was her daughter-in-law, but the neighbors who came and went already knew who Yu Lily was. After running for half an hour, Yu Lily washed her hands and started to make breakfast when she came back. Fortunately, Yu Lily had learned to be self-reliant from a young age. She had a knack for cooking. In about half an hour, breakfast for 4 was ready. When she returned to the room, Ming wasn't in bed. The blankets on the bed were in a mess. It looked like he had just woken up. Yu Lily went forward to touch him. The blankets were still warm. She folded the blankets. Just as she put them down, she heard a slight movement behind her. She could tell that the person behind her had deliberately lightened her footsteps. Yu Lily's lips curled up. She suddenly turned around and shouted, "Hey!" Ming originally wanted to scare her, but when she suddenly turned around, he was frightened by her. Yu Lily saw that Ming was obviously frightened and laughed out loud. She pointed at him and laughed mercilessly. "Are you trying to scare me?" Ming gritted his teeth and pushed her onto the bed. He reached out and touched her waist fiercely. With a fierce look, he said, "You dare to laugh at me?" Yu Lily was ticklish, so she felt uncomfortable being scratched by him. She laughed out loud, but at the same time, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed his hand and begged, "No, no, who are you talking to?" "With you, ha ha ha, stop scratching me. I can't take it anymore, who am I? What should you call me? If you're right, then I won't catch you." Ming's tone contained a hint of a smile, but at the same time, there was a strong sense of threat. Yu Lily understood as soon as she heard that. She curled up and clutched her stomach. She grabbed his hand and begged, "Honey, honey, don't." Chapter 13:10. They fought a bloody battle. These words, Yu Lily pried his hand away and whispered behind his back, "Be careful not to get sick." Ming had a look of surprise on his face. He turned his head to look at Yu Lily and asked in astonishment, "So, you can still get sick like this? I've never heard of it." Yu Lily pushed him. "Now that you've heard, let's go." Ming nodded. He frowned and said seriously, "I heard about it, but I don't believe it. Come on, let's try it." As he spoke, he pushed Yu Lily inside. Yu Lily glared at him and pushed him away forcefully. "Get lost. Mom and Dad are going to look for you later." Ming looked regretful. "Then let's try again tonight. Try your head." Ha ha ha. By the time Yu Lily and Ming came out, Xiao Ziqing was already halfway through her meal. Huijin was reading the newspaper. In his spare time, he raised his head and looked at them. In a low voice, he said, "Time for breakfast. Lily's breakfast is pretty good. Of course, I've been eating her cooking all the time." Ming pulled Yu Lily over to sit down without any hesitation. Wiping his hands with a wet towel, Ming took a bite of his breakfast and ate it with relish. Yu Lily felt a little embarrassed and said, "Thank you, Dad." Huijin put down the newspaper and looked at Yu Lily. "When are you planning to hold the wedding? Seriously, why didn't you tell your family about such a big thing like getting married? How can this girl only have one marriage certificate?" Huijin's words made Yu Lily feel guilty. Xiao Ziqing raised her head and snorted, "Why do you care so much about them? They can do whatever they want." "Soon, I'm already preparing," Ming replied as he ate. Yu Lily heard his words and looked at him in surprise. Ming was already preparing for his wedding? When did that happen? Why didn't she know anything about it? Ming acted as if he hadn't noticed Yu Lily's gaze and continued, "As for the guest list, we'll need you and me to help us check it out. When the time comes, we'll need you and me to decide who to invite. You know more than we do, don't you, Mom?" Xiao Ziqing enjoyed his flattery very much. Xiao Ziqing glanced at her son and harumphed. Now you remember your parents. When you went to Fujian to please your wife, you didn't even think about us. Yu Lily was even more embarrassed. As the person involved, it was a little embarrassing to be called out like that. With a look of disapproval, he said, "Mom, what you said is wrong. What are we? We're family. We've known each other for more than 30 years. Who are we? But if you don't get your wife back, how are you going to have grandchildren in the future? Without grandchildren, what will you do in the future? I'm doing this for the sake of your old age." Yu Lily almost slapped him. Did you want a child just to fool your parents? Oh, Huijin was speechless. Xiao Ziqing glared at him and said, "What a glib tongue." Oh Ming reached under the table and gently placed his hand on Yu Lily's. He said proudly, "If you don't have a glib tongue, how can you coax your wife?" As he spoke, he raised his eyebrows and looked at Yu Lily with a bright smile. Chapter 13:11. Oh Ming put his hand on hers again, but it was quickly pushed away by Yu Lily. He put his hand on hers again, and it was pushed away again and again. The two of them had fun. Xiao Ziqing was a little bored. She shook her head and said, "You two are so dramatic." Yu Lily couldn't help but laugh. She turned her head and found that Oh Ming was also smiling. That was great. Everything was as happy as she had imagined. That was great. A month was enough to change a lot of things. It was said that it took 100 days to recover from an injury. Yi Yuyu finally got discharged on the 30th day of lying in the hospital. During those 30 days, Shen Luo and didn't come, but Shen Jilia came very frequently. After Yi Yuyu's mother got divorced, she married a rich businessman in the capital. Yi Yuyu had grown up in the capital. After making money, she bought a house in the suburbs of the capital. She said she was going home to recuperate, which meant she was going back to the capital. Yi Qianqian had to go to work, so she had already returned to Kingstown. On that day, Shen Jilia sent Yi Yuyu back to the capital. When he saw the car of the Shen family's driver, he naturally pulled Yi Yuyu's luggage toward the car. When Yi Yuyu saw that, she immediately took the luggage from his hand. Shen Jilia turned his head in surprise and asked, "What's wrong, sister-in-law?" Sister-in-law, being in the capital, stepping on the land under her feet, Yi Yuyu felt it was very ironic when she heard that title. You can go back by yourself. I can go back by myself. Yi Yuyu's smile was light, but it was obvious that she was estranged. Yi Yuyu had been like that for a long time. Shen Jilia was more or less used to it, but at this moment, when he heard Yi Yuyu's words, he still felt a little distressed. Looking at the girl in front of him who was a little younger than him, he comforted her and said, "Sister-in-law, let's go home together. After all, you are my sister-in-law, and the Shen family is your home." Yi Yuyu heard that and shook her head. "Thank you, uncle. It's been hard on you these days, but I still need some time to prepare." Prepare? Shen Jilia had already guessed something. Prepare for what? I asked for this marriage. I am very grateful to Shen Luo. He made my dream come true. He had also personally extinguished all her hopes and all her light. I will divorce him. I hope we can still be friends in the future. Yi Yuyu's smile was light, but when combined with her pale complexion, it was like a blooming epiphyllum in the night. It was beautiful, but it could dissipate at any moment. Shen Jilia could clearly feel an indescribable pain in his heart. He looked at her and opened his mouth, but in the end, not a single word came out. Yi Yuyu picked up her luggage, turned around, and headed for the taxi lane. Shen Jilia stared at her from behind. He couldn't help but take a big step forward and block her way. He said, "Let me take you back. It's not easy to hail a cab at this hour, and I happen to be starving. Let's have dinner together, and then I'll take you back." When Yi Yuyu heard that, she saw the pure and sincere expression on his face. She nodded her head and said, "Thank you." "Hey, why are you thanking me?" "Yu, get in the car." When Yu heard her name coming from Shenjilia's mouth, she was stunned for a moment. Chapter 13:12. The boundless downpour washed over the entire mountain and plains. In the middle of the night, it was so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. Other than the feeble cries of the girls, the only sound that could be heard was the pitter-patter of the rain. No one could foresee when the rain would stop, and no one could foresee when they would be able to escape from their predicament. They stayed in the cave for a full 5 to 6 hours. The rain grew heavier and heavier. The mud and rocks were washed away by the rain. They were sticky and turbulent. The cave was quickly submerged by the mud and rocks. Layer after layer of despair engulfed everyone. It wasn't clear who started it, but more than a dozen teenage boys and girls started to cry out weakly. The 18-year-old Shenluo appeared mature and steady among the group of youths. He led his companions in an orderly escape, but a scream came from the back of the group. When his companions turned their heads, they saw that 2 people were missing. Yu and her injured stepsister, Guan Kui. The sudden disappearance of the 2 girls undoubtedly brought unspeakable panic to the group of youths. Everyone was in a mess. It was so chaotic that even Shenluo didn't know what had happened. The mudslide was getting bigger and bigger, but the 2 girls were nowhere to be found. Later, when the rescue team arrived, Shenluo frantically searched for them. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find any news of them. Just as Shenluo was about to give up, he suddenly heard a weak voice. Luo. The voice was hoarse, and it wasn't as gentle and moving as it used to be. Shenluo turned his head and was met with a pair of bloodshot eyes. That pair of eyes pierced through his eyes and shook his soul. Shenluo instinctively took a step back. The ground beneath his feet was empty, and he felt as if he had fallen into an abyss. With a sudden thump, his heart felt like it was being pulled by someone. When he opened his eyes, it was still pitch black. The air was clean. The room was clean. The environment was clean. Shenluo was stunned for a long time before he let out a long sigh. He reached up and touched his forehead. Cold sweat was dripping. He got up and dragged his slippers into the kitchen. He poured himself a cup of warm water and drank it in one gulp. "Brother." Shenluo was caught off guard by the sudden male voice. His heart skipped a beat. She turned her head and saw Shenjilia sitting on the sofa with a cell phone in his hand and several beer cans in front of him. Shenluo breathed a sigh of relief. He walked over to him and sat down beside him. "When did you get here?" Shenluo asked tiredly as he put down the cup. The lights in the living room were off, and the surroundings were pitch black. It was normal for Shenluo to not notice Shenjilia sitting there quietly. Unfortunately, Shenjilia was sitting on the sofa playing with his phone. The brightness on his phone was quite high. With one look, she could tell that Shenluo was not in his right mind. Shenjilia opened a bottle of beer and handed it over. "Did you have another nightmare?" Shenluo took it but didn't drink it. He let out a long sigh and leaned against the sofa as he stared at the dark ceiling. "Jilia, do you think there are ghosts in this world?" Shenjilia pouted and shook his head. "I've never believed in such things." "Do you believe in God?" "I don't believe you." "Then do you believe in retribution?" "I don't believe you," Shenjilia said. Chapter 13:13. Shenluo looked away and slowly fell on the beer can in front of him. He slowly said, "But some people deserve retribution." Shenjilia heard that and frowned. He picked up the beer can in front of him and took a sip. He changed the topic. "Sister-in-law was discharged from the hospital today. I brought her back to the capital." Well, what about now? Shen Luoan asked casually. He didn't seem to care at all. Now she has gone back to her own house. She doesn't want to come back with me. He looked at Shen Luoan and said disapprovingly, during this period of time, only my parents and I visited her. As her husband, you didn't even give her a call. Brother, it's not just them who think you're going overboard. Even as her younger brother, I think you shouldn't have done this. Shen Luoan looked at Shen Luoan. When Shen Luoan heard that, he turned his head and looked at Shenjilia with a faint smile. When Shenjilia caught Yi Yuyu's gaze, he felt even angrier. He said, Brother, I don't know what's going on between you and sister-in-law, but I think that if there's any misunderstanding between you, it's better to clear things up. Yi Yuyu really likes you. Otherwise, she wouldn't want to marry you so much. She has always wanted to marry me. Shen Luoan casually shook the beer bottle. Didn't I fulfill her wish? Shenjilia was speechless. He looked at him angrily and shook his head. Look at you now. Do you have any sense of responsibility as a husband? No. You are simply wasting her youth. Brother, you can't treat a girl like this. Shen Luoan slammed the beer bottle on the table. He immediately stood up and said casually, if you are going to lecture me, then you can shut up. I don't want to hear it. As he spoke, he had already started walking. However, after a moment, he seemed to have thought of something and stopped. I'll go see her tomorrow. As for the responsibilities of a husband, perhaps you can come with me and teach me how to fulfill my responsibilities. Shenjilia was infuriated by his attitude. He felt more and more sorry for Yi Yuyu. He looked at Shen Luoan's back and snorted. Divorcing you was the right decision. Yi Yuyu was such a good girl. Shen Luoan stopped in his tracks. What do you mean? When Shenjilia saw that Yi Yuyu was finally reacting, he felt strangely at ease. In a menacing voice, he said, Actually, when I just got off the plane today, I wanted to bring her home, but Yi Yuyu refused to come. She's already making preparations. She might divorce you at any time. Shen Luoan stood with his back to Shenjilia and said nothing. Shenjilia stared at his back and enunciated each word clearly, you don't cherish it anyway. It's better for you to get a divorce. In the depths of Shen Luoan's eyes, there seemed to be a violent storm that could not be calmed. However, he didn't say anything else. He strode forward. Shenjilia didn't know if he had done the right thing, but Shen Luoan's attitude was far beyond his expectations. If he had a reaction, it meant that he cared. Since he cared about Yi Yuyu, why did he have to provoke Shen Manting? Shenjilia was getting more and more confused. The elder brother he had once respected the most had changed. Yi Yuyu didn't tell anyone about her return to the capital. Their old friends had also slowly drifted apart because they hadn't been in contact for too long. Chapter 13-14. Fortunately, Yi Yuyu didn't have the habit of sleeping naked at home or sleeping in only her underwear. She was dressed in loose, casual home clothes, which were still presentable enough to meet people. Yi Yuyu looked in the mirror. When she saw that she wasn't too pale, she walked over and opened the door. When she opened the door and saw the face that she hadn't seen in a long time, Yi Yuyu froze. The man in front of her was young and calm. His figure was tall and straight like a pine tree, and he was handsome and awe-inspiring. He looked to be in his 20s or 30s, but he had a unique aura of pride. His temperament was like a cool breeze. It was unforgettable. Why are you here? Yi Yuyu's voice was a little high. Her tone was full of disbelief. Li Jinnan's gaze fell behind her. He looked around without any expression. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked, Aren't you going to invite me in? Yi Yuyu looked at him in disbelief. She looked at the clock behind her. It was past 9 in the morning. Isn't this a little too early? Before Yi Yuyu could reply, Li Jinnan had already walked in through the gap beside her. His demeanor showed that he didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his behavior. Yi Yuyu had just finished her breakfast. She had made a sandwich with milk. She had drunk half of the milk, and there was still some left in the sandwich. The house was very clean, and the decor was very nice. The overall feeling gave off a youthful vibe. However, it also seemed that he hadn't bothered with her for a long time. Or perhaps, the owner's style was slowly changing. It gave off a casual and carefree feeling. The environment is not bad. Li Jinnan looked around and nodded his head. He looked as if he had come down from the countryside to do some research. Yi Yuyu quickly walked in and stood in front of Li Jinnan. She asked, "GM Li, why are you here? Also, how did you know about this place?" Li Jinnan received these questions in a row and turned his head to look at her. His dark eyes were as calm as the moon. They were gentle, but filled with coldness. One look at them gave off an indescribable sense of depth. "I came to the capital on a business trip. I heard that you were here, so I dropped by." As he spoke, his gaze fell on Yi Yuyu's injured arm. "It looks like you're recovering well. Who did you hear that from?" "Not many people know that I live here." There was no way Yi Qianqian would tell him. After all, Yi Qianqian had nothing to do with that man. While Yi Yuyu was puzzled, a light suddenly flashed in her mind. She asked, "Mira said that?" Li Jinnan glanced at her, then looked at his wristwatch and said, "My flight is at 2:00 in the afternoon. Let's have dinner together. I haven't had breakfast yet. Let's go out and eat." He didn't answer Yi Yuyu directly. Instead, he changed the subject. However, such an attitude was tantamount to tacit approval. Yi Yuyu was a little annoyed. She looked at Li Jinnan, and the weird feeling in her heart intensified. After considering her words, she said, "GM Li, why are you so nice to me? If it's because of what happened that night, I hope you won't take it to heart. After all, we're both adults. You're so outstanding, and you're more suited for a better girl. I'm already married." Chapter 13-15. Faced with Li Jinnan's gaze, Yi Yuyu felt a little uncomfortable. Yi Yuyu stood rooted to the ground and swallowed hard. Li Jinnan took a step forward. When Yi Yuyu saw that, she instinctively took a step back. Seeing that, Li Jinnan stopped in his tracks. Looking at the woman in front of him, he laughed and said, "Miss Yi, as your boss, I feel that it is my duty to be responsible for you. Also, my interest in married women." His gaze swept over Yi Yuyu. When he saw Yi Yuyu's slightly pale face, he clicked his tongue and shook his head. What he meant couldn't be more clear. Although this was what Yi Yuyu had hoped for, to have Li Jinnan express it so openly was a little embarrassing for Yi Yuyu. "Thank you, GM Li," Yi Yuyu smiled. "Thanks to you, my health has improved a lot. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in such a popular TV series. It's my fault that I didn't cherish the opportunity. However, I still hope that GM Li won't abandon me. I want to continue to develop in the entertainment industry." If she wanted to be successful, if she wanted to stand out, that was the only way. Her mother wouldn't give her a good life, and the Shen family wouldn't give her happiness. Now, Yi Yuyu could only rely on herself. Li Jinnan turned his face. His sharp eyebrows were slightly raised. His eyes, which were like the deep moon, were even deeper and more intense than before. After staring at Yi Yuyu for about 2 seconds, Li Jinnan looked away and slowly said, "Since you are already mine, I will not mistreat you." When Yi Yuyu heard that, her heart skipped a beat. Inexplicably, she felt that there was some ambiguity in his words. "Since I am mine, I will not mistreat me," what does that mean? Is he saying that Yi Yuyu is a part of his company, or does he mean something else? Yi Yuyu's heart was in turmoil. She couldn't figure out what that man meant. She looked at Li Jinnan and was about to speak, but he continued without changing his expression, however. Yi Yuyu swallowed the words that had been on the tip of her tongue when she saw his expression, which couldn't have been any more natural. But Yi Yuyu looked at him and waited for him to continue. Li Jinnan turned around and slowly said, "Opportunities are for those who are prepared. Luck is possible, but strength is the most important factor that determines success. Instead of worrying about being abandoned, it's better to work hard to improve yourself so that it's hard for others to give you up." Yi Yuyu didn't reply. She merely nodded her head. Li Jinnan looked at her deeply for a moment before walking toward the door. As he walked, he seemed to be explaining and bidding farewell. "You have great potential, so I can't let you waste it. Since I know that you're fine, I'm leaving too. Rest well. When you're fully recovered, tell Mira to inform me." His words put Yi Yuyu's mind at ease. Asking Mila to inform him meant that he wasn't paying attention to her all the time and didn't know when she could recover. When Yi Yuyu heard the hidden meaning in his words, she felt at ease. "Okay, take care." Presently Li Jinnan could hear the relief in her voice. His jaw tightened a little, but he didn't say a word as he strode forward. Yi Yuyu's apartment was in a middle-class neighborhood. There were people who could drive luxury cars, but there weren't many. A black Bentley stretch limousine caught Shen Luo's eye. The license plate was A16888. This car belonged to the Yuo Group. Chapter 13:16. However, the Yuo Group had always been aloof. Someone who could use such a high-end car, regardless of whether it was a VIP or one of their own, had to be very important. Shen Luo parked the car. When he walked out, he caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. The figure was standing straight. When he walked, he had a natural elegance and calmness. One look and you could tell that he was from an extraordinary family. Looking at his face, he looked similar to the famous Li Xicheng in Kingstown. However, this man looked tougher and sharper. Li Jinnan. In the past few years, he had risen to fame and had everything going smoothly for him. He was ranked number 1 on the list of the richest men that women wanted to marry. He was also the CEO of the company that Yi Yuyu had signed with. However, this young CEO wasn't that approachable. She had never heard of him having any scandals. Now, why would he come to such a place for an unknown star? Seeing Li Jinnan appear, Shen Luo seemed to understand something. Standing in the same place, Shen Luo kept his eyes on Li Jinnan. Following his footsteps, he walked forward. Li Jinnan had already noticed the pair of eyes. When he turned his head, he could only see a withered branch covering the figure's face. There was no gap. For a moment, Li Jinnan didn't know who he was. Not caring, Li Jinnan went to the back seat and let the driver take him to the destination. Seeing the black Bentley leave, Shen Luo's face became darker and darker. The anger that had been buried deep in his heart for a long time suddenly came out, and it couldn't be controlled. He strode in and quickly got into the elevator. Yi Yuyu had just cleaned up the cutlery when the doorbell rang again. Hearing the doorbell, Yi Yuyu's first reaction was that Li Jinnan was back. After washing her hands, she took off her high ponytail and combed her hair with her fingers. Then, she walked up to open the door and said, "GM Li, An." Li Xicheng was stunned. When she saw the obviously gloomy and angry face in front of her, Yi Yuyu stopped talking. Shen Luo saw Yi Yuyu's reaction and sneered. "What? Are you disappointed to see that it's not your GM Li?" Yi Yuyu gazed at him. Her heart, which had been calm for a long time, suddenly began to throb with pain. In the face of Shen Luo's mocking and disdainful gaze, she felt as if thousands of arrows had pierced through her heart. It was so painful that she didn't even dare to breathe. She pursed her lips and looked at her husband. After a long time, she asked, "Why are you here?" Shen Luo'an's face was gloomy, and he had no intention of answering. He pushed the door open and walked in without saying anything. Yi Yuyu froze at the door. She opened her mouth to stop him, but she quickly remembered something else. After closing the door, she turned to look at him and asked, "What would you like to drink?" Shen Luo'an didn't answer. He turned his head and looked at her coldly. He smiled coldly and said, "I didn't expect you to be so capable." "Why? Is it because I won't touch you that anyone can have sex with you?" The words of mockery and disdain were like a sharp sickle, heavily and ruthlessly sawing at her heart. Chapter 13-17. It was as if her question was a joke. Shen Luo'an chuckled and took a step forward without warning. His sudden approach caught Yi Yuyu off guard. She instinctively took a step back. Before Yi Yuyu could react, Shen Luo'an's hand reached forward. Yi Yuyu's hand was gripped so tightly that it hurt. Shen Luo'an's eyes were fierce. He clenched his teeth and sneered. He held her hand and leaned in. He enunciated each word clearly, "You don't have to pretend in front of me. Your nature can fool everyone, but not me." Yi Yuyu's eyebrows knitted together in a frown. Anger swept over her as well. She looked up at the man she had loved for more than a decade, the husband she had hated for a long time. Yi Yuyu's breathing became more and more rapid. His hand that was being grabbed struggled for a moment, but then it was forcefully dragged away. He couldn't fight back at all. The pain in her hand made Yi Yuyu's eyes turn red, and tears welled up in them. In Shen Luo'an's eyes, it was no different from an act. He looked coldly at his so-called wife in front of him. His eyes were filled with disgust. "Why? Are you wronged? Or do you think that I will forgive you like I did in the past if you put on such an expression? Yi Yuyu, aren't you too naive?" Yi Yuyu clenched her teeth and didn't say a word. Her face turned paler and paler, and her breathing became heavier. Her eyes became moist, and she cried out in pain, "It hurts." Shen Luo'an squinted his eyes and looked at her hand suspiciously. The skin that was exposed from the cuff of her sleeve was already red. It looked like the injury wasn't light. At the same time, Shen Luo'an remembered the reason Yi Yuyu had been hospitalized. Shocked, Shen Luo'an immediately let go of her hand. Yi Yuyu's hands had been tensed up the entire time. She wasn't the least bit prepared for the sudden release. The sudden release of his grip caused him to stumble backward. Her back hit the chair behind her. Yi Yuyu's eyes were red as she inhaled. She swallowed her saliva. She felt a lump in her throat. She pulled up the sleeves of her pajamas, revealing the bruised skin underneath. When Shen Luo'an saw her hand, his heart was filled with complicated emotions. His eyes were filled with regret, shock, and worry. He took a step forward and reached his hand out. He wanted to grab Yi Yuyu's arm to examine it, but she quickly dodged his hand. Yi Yuyu looked at her husband in front of her vigilantly and with a complicated expression. She said sadly, "Shen Luo'an, let's get a divorce." Divorce. As early as last night, Shen Luo'an had already expected this. When he arrived, he was already mentally prepared. But hearing it with his own ears, Shen Luo'an was still a little shocked. This woman actually wanted to divorce him? Marrying him had been her dream all these years, hadn't it? Now, she actually told him in front of him that she wanted a divorce. Shen Luo'an couldn't describe what he was feeling at the bottom of his heart. Soreness, pain, numbness, anger, jealousy, hatred. Chapter 13-18. His words were harsh to the ears. Especially for a woman, being scolded as a used shoe was something that no one could accept. Shen Luo'an. Don't think of everyone as filthy as you. He's my boss. He's different from an animal like you who wouldn't even let go of your own sister. Yi Yuyu endured the pain in her arm and yelled angrily. The expression on Shen Luo'an's face darkened. If I'm an animal, then what are you, the one who chases after animals? You're the one who sought death to marry an animal. You're despicable beyond redemption. Despicable, Yi Yuyu had never been eloquent. When she was scolded in such a manner, the anger in her heart surged. She could only retort angrily and roar, "You're the despicable one." That retort triggered Shen Luo'an's deep-rooted bad habits. With a cold laugh, he closed in on her and enunciated each word clearly. If you weren't despicable, why would you cry and beg to marry me? If you weren't despicable, why would you shamelessly stay in a household where everyone despised you for so long? Do you know how much Uncle Guan regretted it after your mother married him? Especially after what happened to Guan Kui. Did you think that when Uncle Guan said he didn't blame you, he really didn't? Guan Kui, the name that had been sealed away for a long time, was suddenly mentioned without warning. The scar that had been buried deep in Yi Yuyu's heart for a long time was suddenly torn open. Yi Yuyu's expression changed in an instant. Shen Luo'an found Yi Yuyu's expression to be extremely piercing. The coldness on his face gradually faded, and his lips curled into a slightly cruel smile. After so many years, even if it was just a little, have you ever felt the slightest bit of regret? His words sounded like a question, but at the same time, like he was talking to himself. Just as Yi Yuyu was about to answer, Shen Luo'an interrupted her and said, "You haven't. Brother Luo'an." The pain in Yi Yuyu's arm intensified, but the bitterness in her heart didn't lessen. "You know this has nothing to do with me. You know it. I know. I've always known that you're jealous of her. You're jealous of her family background, her personality, and her popularity." As he spoke, his eyes stared straight at Yi Yuyu. His smile grew crueler, wider, and colder. There was no warmth in it. "Sometimes, I really wish that she wasn't so outstanding. Even if she was just a little bit worse than you, she wouldn't have been harmed by you like that. It wasn't me." "Shen Luo'an, are you crazy? You know it wasn't me." Yi Yuyu's face was turning paler and paler. Large beads of sweat were forming on her forehead. She looked like she was on the verge of collapsing. "She's my sister." Shen Luo'an sneered as if he had heard something ridiculous. "Your sister? Someone like Yi Qianqian is your sister?" Her gaze was full of pity and sorrow. "As for Guan Kui, when did you ever treat her as your sister? All I see is that she's devoted to you, but you're trying your best to steal the man she likes." Yi Yuyu's face paled, and her breathing quickened. Chapter 13:19. The pain in Yi Yuyu's hand was getting worse and worse. Her heart was getting worse and worse. "You hate me." Yi Yuyu's voice was choked with guilt. Shen Luo'an smiled and shook his head gently. "You think too highly of yourself. Only when there's love can there be hate. I just hate you." These words were like a spear that suddenly and fiercely pierced through her. In an instant, fresh blood sprayed out, and it was a horrible sight to behold. Yi Yuyu looked up at him. She frowned and smiled sadly. "Then why did you marry me? Everyone wanted me to marry you, so I did. You were happy, weren't you?" Shen Luo'an's slightly rough palm had the smell of disinfectant because it had been in contact with all kinds of drugs for years. It was neither strong nor weak. In the past, Yi Yuyu had loved this smell. It was a smell that belonged to Shen Luo'an. It was special and unique. At some point, this smell had gradually drifted away from her. It had become unfamiliar. Yi Yuyu sniffed it greedily. The bitterness in her heart overflowed to her eyes. Shen Luo'an could clearly sense Yi Yuyu's mood swings. The pleasure of revenge that he had imagined was nowhere to be found. Looking at the woman in front of him, whose face was filled with disappointment, Shen Luo'an's heart ached. He hadn't felt this way in a long time. Ha! After all, she was someone he had known for more than a decade. No matter how heartless he was, he couldn't compare to a fraction of this woman. But Shen Luo and stroked her chin with his palm. His movement was heavy and slow. Even though I hate you so much, I can't bear to divorce you. What do you think I should do? Tears welled up in her eyes, but she held them back. They didn't fall. Yi Yuyu's expression was one of forbearance and stubbornness. She reached out and smacked his hand. Slap! Shen Luo's hand fell. Very quickly, the man's eyes turned cold again. The smile on his face widened. It was cruel and merciless. For so long, we've been husband and wife in name, but not in reality. Why don't we? He didn't have to finish his sentence. Yi Yuyu was already panicking. Taking a step back, Yi Yuyu looked at the man in front of her who obviously didn't love her. She yelled, "What do you want?" Shen Luo didn't answer. Instead, he tugged her forcefully with his large hand and dragged her to the sofa. Yi Yuyu's heart ached. She struggled violently and shouted, "Shen Luo, let me go." Let go? He gritted his teeth and sneered, "Stop pretending. You love me so much, so you must desire me. I'm not in a good mood today and I need to vent. Next time, there won't be such a good opportunity." These words made it seem as if his current actions were charity, as if he was bestowing a gift upon them. The excruciating pain from her arm nearly caused her to collapse. Tears gushed out of her eyes. She couldn't tell if they were tears of pain, fear, or both. Shen Luo lowered his head and used his mouth to bite on the button of her pajamas. He pulled it open forcefully. Her pajamas opened up, revealing her black bra. Her snow-white skin was especially eye-catching against the extreme darkness. The look in Shen Luo's eyes deepened, and his throat tightened. The longing in his heart suddenly surged. Chapter 13:20. He used his chin to open her collar, and his lips landed on her delicate skin. Her skin was young and supple. Even Shen Luo hadn't expected that his desire, which had always been difficult to arouse, would burst forth like water from a broken dam. It couldn't be stopped. Yi Yuyu's unease grew, and she struggled more frequently. The pain in her hand prevented her from using too much force. Shen Luo's lips began to sweep across her skin. The unfamiliar sensation, the touch that she had never experienced before, made Yi Yuyu unable to hold it in any longer. She broke down and began to cry. Her body, which had been writhing and struggling, stopped. She yelled, "It hurts." "My hand." The sudden cry froze Shen Luo on the spot. He had already forgotten about her injury, but it came back to him again. He immediately let go of her hand. Yi Yuyu hugged her hand and cried unabashedly. Her palm-sized face turned red, and tears streamed down her cheeks. The sound of her breaking down was touching. Her hand, which had already been red a moment ago, was now bruised and swollen. It looked particularly hideous. Shen Luo was shocked. He instinctively went forward to help her up and said, "How did this happen? Let's go. I'll take you to the hospital." Yi Yuyu wailed loudly. He didn't know if it was because of the grievance, the pain, or both. When Shen Luo carried her, Yi Yuyu held her injured arm and didn't struggle. One of the buttons on Yi Yuyu's pajamas had been pulled open, and a large area of her chest was revealed. Her snow-white skin and the moderate cleavage were delicate and exquisite. They were faintly discernible under the high-quality material. It was hard not to take a second look at such a scene. It was precisely because of those two looks that Shen Luo's originally hard-to-arouse response became even more rampant. He reached out and pulled her clothes up. In a hoarse voice, he said, "Put on your clothes." Yi Yuyu cried even more fiercely. She hugged her arm and clutched her collar as she sobbed. Shen Luo'an's brows were tightly knitted together. He quickly carried her to the elevator. When they reached the hospital, it was confirmed that the wound had relapsed. When Yi Yuyu came out of the hospital, Shen Luo'an was long gone. He had expected it. When Yi Yuyu heard that, she felt both relieved and disappointed. Ignoring the doctor's suggestion that she stay in the hospital for observation, Yi Yuyu insisted on being discharged. Just as she was about to leave, the nurse reminded her, "Miss, please go to the first floor to pay the bill." He didn't even pay the fee. Yi Yuyu held the bill in her hand. She didn't feel good about it. She picked up a pair of slippers from the hospital and walked out in her pajamas. By the time she got a cab home, it was already afternoon. Yi Yuyu was very hungry, and her hand had been bandaged up again. There was no way she could cook anything on her own, so she picked up her phone and ordered takeout. After eating, Yi Yuyu made sure that all the doors were locked before she lay down and went to sleep. Tired. After Guan Kui's incident, she moved out of her stepfather's house. After living here for so many years, he had gotten used to it. He was so used to it that even though he hadn't seen his mother for a long time, he didn't feel anything. During the month she was hospitalized, her biological mother only visited her once. That time, he only sat for 10 minutes before rushing back to the imperial capital. No matter how brave Yi Yuyu was, she would never have imagined that her mother, whom she rarely saw, would come looking for her at the small house she lived in. Chapter 1321. When Yi Yuyu opened the door, she was shocked to see them. One of them was a well-maintained noblewoman, and the other was a middle-aged man who looked scholarly. Yi Tian hadn't seen her daughter in a long time. When she saw Yi Yuyu's pale face, her gaze slowly moved down. When she saw that Yi Yuyu's pajamas were missing a button, she frowned and said, "Why are you dressed like that? Hurry up and get changed." Yi Yuyu looked down at herself. She hadn't exposed herself or exposed anything. It was just a set of pajamas. If I don't dress like this in my own home, what else should I dress like? Mrs. Guan. Yi Yuyu looked at them and spoke to her mother with a hint of mockery in her voice. "Don't listen to your mother. You should be more casual at home," the man beside Yi Tian said. Yi Yuyu looked at him. Her heart felt empty and guilty. She turned to the side and said, "Uncle, come in." Guan Yanhong smiled and nodded his head. He pulled Yi Tian in and sat on the sofa. Yi Yuyu got them the only drink she had, mineral water. She poured them a glass of water in plastic cups before sitting on the sofa opposite them and asking, "Why were you looking for me?" Both of them were busy people. They wouldn't have come to me for no reason. However, it couldn't have been a small matter if the two of them had been called out. Yi Yuyu was a little reserved. She kept an eye on her clothes. Her hand was still hurting. It would be troublesome to change her clothes. She couldn't afford to waste any more time with these two people. "Yuyu, you're 26 years old this year. You're a big girl now. I heard that you were discharged from the hospital. I wanted to visit you today, but when we arrived at the Shen residence, we heard that you were still staying here. Did you get into an argument with Shen Luo'an?" Guan Yanhong's voice was filled with concern. His eyes beneath his gold-rimmed glasses had a unique charm to them. When she heard that, Yi Yuyu was reminded of Shen Luo'an's behavior that morning. She shook her head and lied. "No. I'm just staying here temporarily." "I see." Guan Yanhong nodded his head and replied, "That's good. I was really afraid that the two of you would get into a fight. But you have to go back soon. Don't stay here alone. You're a girl with a family. At least you'll have people to look after you." "Got it, uncle." Yi Yuyu smiled. She was polite but distant. "Thank you, uncle." Guan Yanhong smiled kindly, but there was no other expression on his face. Yi Tian opened her mouth and said, Yu, the reason we're here this time isn't just to see you. We also have a favor to ask of you. Yu looked up at her mother and asked, what is it? Well. Yi Tian found it difficult to speak. She instinctively turned her head to look at Guan Yanhong. Guan Yanhong gave her a look of encouragement and placed his hand gently on the back of her hand. Yi Tian asked, you've been married to Luo and for so long. Don't you plan to have children? To have children, Yu felt a sharp pain in her heart. Were they going to have a child? The image of Shen Luo and's hideous expression surfaced in her mind. She pursed her lips and gently shook her head. No. When Yi Tian heard that, she deliberated over her words and said, I know that you must want to prioritize your career. That's why I'm here to ask a favor of you. Since you and Shen Luo and are husband and wife, I'd like to ask for something from you. What is it? Shen Luo and Seaman. Chapter 1322. Yu had never imagined that Yi Tian would make such a request. Isn't that a little too much? Yu's first reaction was to think that Yi Tian was joking. She scrutinized Yi Tian's face for a long time, but she couldn't detect any hint of a joke. Yi Tian said, Yu, Kei's condition has improved a lot recently. You know that if Kei hadn't gotten into trouble, you wouldn't have been the one marrying Shen Luo. So, Mom. Yu interrupted Yi Tian. You don't have to remind me about that. Furthermore, you shouldn't have asked me for this. I think it would be better if you asked Shen Luo directly. Yi Tian wanted to, but Shen Luo's temper was too eccentric and extreme. Furthermore, he had always been slightly paranoid. If Yi Tian asked for it herself, Shen Luo might not give her face. But, Yu was Shen Luo's wife, after all. She wouldn't do anything to him. Yi Tian's mind was filled with wishful thinking. She looked at Yu and said, you know Shen Luo's temper. Is this your idea, uncle? Yu looked at Guan Yanhong and asked, how is sister's condition? I haven't visited her in a long time. Guan Yanhong's expression didn't change in the slightest. In the face of Yu's obviously meaningful words, he nodded his head and replied, you've been busy for the past year and haven't had the time to visit her. But, Kei's condition has improved a lot recently. If you have the time, we can arrange a time to go together. Her condition is better because I haven't visited her, right? When Yu heard that, she understood Guan Yanhong's meaning. But, she pretended not to understand. She smiled and nodded her head. Sure, uncle. Call me when you have the time. But, I can't give you the item that you want from Shen Luo. After all, no normal person would keep something like that, right? I'm afraid I won't be able to help you. I'm sorry. Perhaps I can pass on a message and get Shen Luo to deliver it to you personally? Guan Yanhong's brows knitted together. He was clearly dissatisfied with Yu's words. Normal people wouldn't stay. In other words, he was indirectly saying that they were abnormal? Should I tell Shen Luo to deliver it to them himself? What a joke. How could Shen Luo possibly care about them? Yu, how can you speak to your uncle like that? Yi Tian's brows were tightly furrowed as she lectured Yu. When Yu heard that, she laughed and replied, am I wrong? Or is there something I said that you are not satisfied with? Please point it out and I will correct it. Yi Tian was at a loss for words. She didn't know what to say. Yu stood up, waved her hand, and said, my hand is injured. I just took the medicine, and I'm a little sleepy. If there's nothing else, I'll go to bed. Yu closed her eyes in exhaustion. The effects of the drug are too strong. I can't even keep my eyes open. There's food and drinks in the fridge. Help yourselves. As he spoke, he really walked inside without turning back at all. Yi Tian hadn't expected Yi Yu to be so disrespectful. Chapter 1323. Guan Yanhong looked intently in the direction that Yi Yu had left. He stood up and said, "Let's go." But Yi Tian was a little indignant. She hasn't agreed to it yet. Are we just going to leave like that? Guan Yanhong shook his head and replied, "It's true that she doesn't have the ability. It's not like you don't know how Shen Luo entreats her. We'll talk about this another time. Is that all right?" "Yeah, I have my ways." Yi Tian nodded her head when she heard that and walked out with Guan Yanhong. When she heard the door close, Yi Yu leaned against the wall of the corridor. Her eyes turned cold. She wants Shen Luo and semen. Could it be that she wants to impregnate Guan Kui? But Guan Kui can't even take care of herself now. How can she take care of a child? Or perhaps, she simply wants Shen Luo and's child. Unfortunately, the relationship between her and Shen Luo and was merely an empty title. Even if they were a real couple, there wouldn't be a wife who would be so magnanimous as to allow another woman to take her husband's semen. Guan Kui, it was a name that she hadn't heard in a long time. In the short span of a day, she had heard it a few times. It had indeed been a long time since she had seen her. Yi Yu walked back to her room and took out her cell phone to call the person she could trust the most at the moment, Yi Qianqian. Yi Qianqian was at work. It hadn't been easy for her to return to her normal routine. Even if she was as busy as a dog, she couldn't be in a good mood. Just as she was excitedly discussing the plot with a cartoonist, her cell phone rang. It was Yi Yu. She couldn't afford to be distracted in the office, but it was rare for Yi Yu to call her. Yi Qianqian didn't want to hang up. He pressed the mute button on his phone for the time being and then walked out. She called back. Yi Yu's call was quickly picked up. "Hello, Yu. What's up?" Yi Qianqian was very concerned about her younger sister. Her voice was low as she looked around and replied, "I'm at work." Yi Yu could tell from her voice that she had snuck out to make the call. Her heart warmed as she said, "Sister, I'd like to go to Kingstown to rely on you for a while. Is that okay?" She hadn't expected Yi Yu to make such a decision. However, joy quickly filled her heart and she replied, "That's great. I've long since persuaded you to come to Kingstown to stay with me. You see, you don't have anyone to take care of you in the capital. If you come over, I'll have company. I'm living alone now, and I'm dying of boredom." "You live alone?" Yi Yu was a little surprised. "Don't you have a roommate? Isn't you Lily living with you?" "Hey, let's not talk about it. We agreed to be single happily, but this guy got married secretly. He got his marriage certificate and is preparing for the wedding. Hey, when are you coming?" "I'll be there tonight." "I'll call you when I get there," Yi Yu replied. Yi Qianqian was even more shocked and asked, "Why is it so sudden? Did something happen?" She had grown up in the capital and had a strong sense of belonging there. Even though she no longer lived with Yi Tian, she had no intention of leaving the capital. When she wasn't filming or working, Yi Yu lived in the capital. This was a first for her to come to Kingstown to stay with her. There had to be something going on. Chapter 1324. Sure. Yi Qianqian agreed. "Remember to give me a call when you arrive." "Yeah." Yi Qianqian had just hung up when a voice came from the side. "How dare you be so daring? You'll get your pay deducted." The voice was serious and pretended to be serious. That gave Yi Qianqian a fright. When she turned around, she saw a big smile on his face. There was no hint of warning or unhappiness in his expression. Short hair and delicate features. Who else could it be but you, Lily? Yi Qianqian breathed a sigh of relief. She ran up and pinched Yu Lily's hand mercilessly. You scared me to death. Yu Lily laughed and dodged to the side. If you don't do anything wrong, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door. What are you afraid of? But your sister is coming to Kingstown. Isn't her hand injured? Has it recovered? Yi Qianqian didn't know much. She only knew that Yu Lily had been discharged from the hospital. After telling Yu Lily about the general situation, she looked at Yu Lily's rosy face and said, "Hey, you. I thought you and Ming were really going to break up. I didn't expect you to become my boss's wife, and a superior at that. I'm so jealous." Yu Lily smiled and took her arm. Don't be jealous. Let's go. I'll treat you to afternoon tea. I still have to go to work. It's fine. Just let me know. Yu Lily took her arm and walked in. After greeting the supervisor, the two of them swaggered out of the office under the envious gazes. Because of her face, the whole world knew that Yu Lily had become the boss's wife in Eurasia. The company was in an uproar. However, Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian didn't know that. The two of them arrived at a cafe that they frequented in the past. After ordering some snacks, Yu Lily sat down solemnly and looked at Yi Qianqian. She asked, "Zixixi, are we good friends?" Yi Qianqian was shocked by her serious look. She looked at her for a long time and asked hesitantly, "Did you cause trouble? Am I that kind of person?" "Yes." Yi Qianqian nodded her head seriously. Yu Lily was speechless. "What happened to you? Did you do something wrong?" Yu Lily was speechless when she saw Yi Qianqian's nonchalant expression. She took out a pink envelope from her handbag and handed it to Yi Qianqian. "I've committed a crime and stepped into the grave of love. I'm here to send you an invitation. Would you like to attend the ceremony to announce my love?" When Yi Qianqian received the pink invitation card, her heart calmed down. She couldn't help but laugh. She tore open the envelope and took out the invitation card inside. She said, "It's really going to be settled. D****. Didn't you say it wouldn't be so fast? Why did you suddenly get over it?" My father-in-law said that it's too troublesome to introduce myself to people every day. I'll just have a one-off wedding and introduce myself to the public." Yi Qianqian couldn't help but give her father-in-law a thumbs up. "Your father-in-law is amazing. Didn't your mother-in-law dislike you? How is she now?" Thinking of Qiao Ziqing, Yu Lily smiled and said, "She only has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She's actually quite cute." Yi Qianqian breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's great. Congratulations. But, Qianqian, I have another matter that I'm not sure if I should tell my mother-in-law." "What is it?" "A few days ago, Ming took me for a checkup. The doctor said that it might be difficult for me to get pregnant, Chapter 1325. Yi Qianqian was stunned. "What do you mean by it's very difficult to get pregnant?" "The doctor said that the wall of my uterus is a little thin, so the possibility of pregnancy is a little low." Yu Lily was a little scared and looked at Yi Qianqian in front of her. "What if I really can't give birth in the future? My mother-in-law will despise me. She will definitely say, 'Oh, you hen who can't lay eggs. Don't hog the manger in my house. Hurry up and divorce and find another man. You're not worthy of our Ming.'" The more Yu Lily thought about it, the more anxious she became. Her heart, which was already beating like a drum, began to beat even faster. "If that's the case, what should I do?" Yi Qianqian was amused by her and asked, "How can you have such a vivid imagination? Did your mother-in-law say something like that before?" Yu Lily nodded. "That's how she talks. I'm a little afraid of her." "What are you afraid of? Didn't you say that she has a sharp tongue but a soft heart?" Why don't you just listen to her with one ear and go out with the other? Yu Lily shook her head and said, I don't know this feeling. If I really can't have a baby, my mother-in-law is a small matter. Oh Ming is the only son. If I really can't have a baby, then their family will have no descendants. I'm so scared. Yi Qianqian was a little nervous after hearing what she said. That makes sense. If you really cause their family to be without descendants, you will be guilty of a grave sin. Yu Lily felt even more uneasy. She took out the examination report from her bag and handed it to Yi Qianqian. Didn't you study medicine in university? Take a look at it for me. Yi Qianqian took it from him. As she read through it, she said, what the F***ck would I know? It's not like I'm a gynecologist. Does your husband know about this? I know. What attitude? He said he didn't mind. Oh Ming didn't mind, but she did. In the deepest part of Yu Lily's heart, she sincerely felt that her current situation was retribution, the legendary retribution in the present. The twins she had killed 5 years ago had come to take revenge. That was why she was in this state. It was said that women who had an abortion would have very bad luck. They would be haunted by bad luck, and the possibility of suffering from depression was also very high. Yu Lily had experienced it all in the past few years. Her luck was really terrible. Not only was he cheated of all his assets, but he also had to deal with all kinds of troubles. As for depression, there was indeed a period of time when she was very depressed. She had encountered all of these things, so she wouldn't be surprised even if something strange happened. She told Yi Qianqian what she was thinking. She had thought that Yi Qianqian would comfort her and enlighten her. Unexpectedly, Yi Qianqian laughed mercilessly and said, Say, miss you, can your imagination get any richer? To be able to add so much drama to such a matter, you're really amazing. Yu Lily asked, don't you think it's possible? You don't know how unlucky I've been for the past few years. Only this year did my luck start to turn. Sigh, I'm really a little scared. Last time, I fainted due to menstrual pain. You know, it should be really difficult to get pregnant. Chapter 1326. Yu Lily pouted her lips and said, Superstition. Aren't you the same? You're here for revenge? If ghosts really existed in this world, Shen Luo and that be **starred, would have died a long time ago. Would it have been your turn? Yi Qianqian didn't bother to be polite and said, since you know that it's superstition, you should keep your feelings to yourself. Don't scare yourself. Yu Lily was speechless. The desserts were finally served. Yu Lily and Yi Qianqian chatted as they ate. There were no fixed topics for women to talk about. The topic kept changing, and the two of them chatted happily. They chatted all the way until it was dinner time before Oh Ming called. She didn't know when Oh Ming had changed Yu Lily's contact on her phone. It had been changed from Rech O to a simple but meaningful word, hubby. When she saw that word, Yu Lily's mood inexplicably improved. She answered the call and said, Hello. Where are you? I'll come pick you up. Oh Ming was driving. The weather had been getting hotter and better. The afterglow of the setting sun was long and scattered across the car. It passed through the window and onto his body, making him feel warm. I'm in a cafe near Eurasia with Qianqian, Yu Lily said with a smile, not avoiding him at all. Yi Qianqian saw the blissful smile on Yu Lily's face. She sat in the chair, filled with grief and indignation. At the same time, she was filled with envy. Although Yi Qianqian didn't know much about Yu Lily's involvement with Oh Ming, she could feel Yu Lily's love for him from the time they had spent together. For a man like Oh Ming to be blind and still chase after her all the way to Fujian to find her, his sincerity for her could be seen. Sigh. This must be love. Yi Qianqian counted with her fingers. She was almost 26 years old. She had been single for so many years. It was really a little sad. Yu Lily didn't know what Oh Ming and Yu Lily were talking about. Her smile grew wider and wider. When she heard the laughter, Yi Qianqian felt even more abused. She said, "Lily, can you restrain yourself in front of a single dog?" Yu Lily laughed unceremoniously and said, "Wait a minute." It was obvious that this sentence was directed at the person on the phone. Yu Lily looked at Yi Qianqian and said, "Tonight, my man is going to take me to a gathering between his brothers. Do you want to come along? Oh Ming has a good brother named Luo Zhan. He's not bad looking and has a good temper." "Ah," you said. "It's a gathering between your husband's brothers. Why would I go? I'm not that desperate for men," she said. "Qianqian is really." Yi Qianqian said. Luo Lily. He is. Luo. Luo Zhan is really not bad. It wasn't easy for him to break up with his girlfriend. Of course, I have to make my move quickly. Yu Lily's tone was a little smug. She then egged Yi Qianqian on and said, "Really, let's go together. It's a group of men, and I'm the only woman. It'll be very boring." Second brother and his wife are going too, Oh Ming reminded her kindly. Yu Lily pretended not to hear him and said to Yi Qianqian, "Just treat it like you're accompanying me." Chapter 13:27. It doesn't matter. We can have dinner together there. Let's go. Yu Lily stood up and held Yi Qianqian's hand. It's not a big party. Let's just be casual. Oh Ming had heard everything. He said helplessly, "I'm at Eurasia. I'm at the crossroads. Come out quickly." "Well, my man is here. Let's go." Yu Lily pulled Yi Qianqian up. She didn't know that her greeting had completely pleased the man on the other side of the phone. Her man, she called him so smoothly. Oh Ming smiled, and his beautiful almond-shaped eyes glanced at the rearview mirror above his head. At a glance, he saw his own happy expression. Yes, so handsome. Yu Lily paid the bill and walked out with Yi Qianqian. She saw Oh Ming's black car from afar. It was a Lamborghini with a flashy design. Yi Qianqian only took one look and felt that Yu Lily was not someone she could match. Yu Lily regarded her as a friend. Yi Qianqian could feel it, but the gap between them seemed a little too big, Yi Qianqian thought to herself. She felt a little inferior and felt that something was wrong. Yu Lily enthusiastically pulled her into the car. Yi Qianqian temporarily retreated and said, "How about I don't go? I remember that I still have a lot of work to do, and I haven't finished a lot of sketches." Yu Lily heard that and waved her hand. "It's okay. Anyway, you always procrastinate. I know you. Come on. If you can't fight, I'll help you. Let's go." "No, this is just an excuse, big sister. The most important thing is, as a poor little editor, will people think that I'm fishing for a rich man if I go there?" Yi Qianqian really felt that it was inappropriate and refused again. "Lily, oh, let's go." Yu Lily pulled her down and closed the door. "Drive." In the driver's seat, Oh Ming glanced at the rearview mirror and chuckled. "Just go and have some fun. It doesn't matter if you don't know anyone. You can play with Yu Lily and keep her company." It just so happened that Luo Zhan, an old single dog in his 30s, also needed a young and beautiful single dog to stimulate him. Soon, they arrived at the number 1 palace. After throwing the car key to the valet, Oh Ming led the two women in. The few brothers gathered together. In fact, there wasn't anything important. They just sat together, drank, chatted, and bullied each other. Li Sicheng and Su Qianxi had arrived a long time ago, sitting on the sofa eating fruit. Luo Zhan alone grabbed the microphone and slowly picked a song. Finally, he picked a love song, which was a classic song by Wuxia and Zhao Shuer. Luo Zhan excitedly handed the microphone to Li Xicheng and Su Qianxi. Sing, sing. Li Xicheng grabbed the microphone and saw the song. He laughed and said, "What are you thinking? I don't sing this kind of song." Luo Zhan had expected it and immediately went to change the song. It was Anita Mui and Jackie Chung's "It's Hard to Love." No. Su Qianxi also refused. Go away. I want to sing something nice, not something so old. Luo Zhan, you don't understand. The older it is, the more classic it is. And in front of a single dog, you can only sing this kind of song. Chapter 1328. Luo Zhan suddenly felt that he had received a critical hit. He looked at Su Qianxi with grief and indignation and roared, "Sister-in-law, do you know that you have been led astray by him? You weren't like this before." Su Qianxi smiled and said, "What was I like before? In the past, when they bullied me, you never participated." Luo Zhan's face was full of pain. Su Qianxi suddenly realized and said seriously, "I won't do it again. Whenever you want to be bullied, tell me, and I will come right away." "Luo Zhan, what are you playing?" Oh Ming's voice drifted over. Behind him was Yu Lily and an unfamiliar girl. Luo Zhan immediately looked at Yi Qianqian and asked, "Who is this?" "This is my good friend. Her name is Yi Qianqian," Yu Lily introduced. She then whispered, 26 years old, single. Luo Zhan immediately understood. Yu Lily wanted to introduce a partner to him. It wasn't that Yi Qianqian hadn't been to such occasions before. Other than Yu Lily, the only other person she knew was Su Qianxi. Looking at Su Qianxi, Yi Qianqian was excited. Su Qianxi had left a deep impression on many people. This woman was simply magnificent. As if sensing Yi Qianqian's gaze, Su Qianxi turned her head to look at her. She smiled at her and asked, "Are you coming over to sing?" Yi Qianqian almost screamed. She hadn't expected her to be so approachable. Su Qianxi saw that she had a reaction, so she extended the microphone and said, "Come here." Yi Qianqian felt a little feverish. She walked over and took the microphone. Halfway through the song, Yu Lily cleverly pressed the reprise button. Yu Lily knew that Yi Qianqian was a microphone hog. Luo Zhan was also a microphone hog, which was also recognized by everyone. Luo Zhan didn't care who he sang with at all. What he cared about was that no one sang with him. Now that there was someone, she didn't act pretentious. After the prelude was played, she opened her mouth and sang, "I'll give you a CD of the past." Luo Zhan's voice was very low, very magnetic, and very accurate. At first glance, it was impossible to tell whether it was an original singer or a self-sung one. People who could sing all had some sort of vocal fetish. Yi Qianqian was no exception. Hearing this voice, she immediately turned to look at Luo Zhan. Damn it! This man wasn't particularly handsome, but when he sang, his charm was unparalleled. Yi Qianqian felt her heart melt, but when it was her turn, she didn't hesitate and continued singing the female part. Yi Qianqian's voice was a little thin. It sounded hollow, but it gave everyone goosebumps. It was the first time that Luo Zhan was amazed by a stranger's voice, and he became excited all of a sudden. After the song was over, Luo Zhan said in surprise, "That's amazing. Have you ever learned music?" Yi Qianqian was a little embarrassed. "I was in the choir when I was in high school." "Great. Again." It was rare for Luo Zhan to meet someone who could sing, and she sang much better than Yu Lily and Su Qianxi. However, Luo Zhan did not have the guts to say this. She rolled her eyes and whispered in his ear, "Why don't we go for a picnic tomorrow?" Oh Ming raised his eyebrows slightly. "What do you want?" "To relax. I'll bring Qianqian and Luo Zhan. Anyway, tomorrow is the weekend." As Yu Lily spoke, she had already leaned over and said, "Look at Luo Zhan. He's so old. How pitiful." Chapter 1329. What's there to ask? Just let me know. You'll bring Luo Zhan tomorrow, and I'll bring Qianqian. Let Qianqian bring the child. Well, they're on the same side anyway, right? Even if the two of them aren't together, or even if they're not interested in each other, it's good to just have fun. Yu Lily's mind was full of wishful thinking. While chatting, she didn't forget to leave a good impression on them. From time to time, she praised Luo Zhan for being responsible and Yi Qianqian for being virtuous. In short, in the eyes of both sides, Yu Lily was a shill. That night, everyone had a great time. Yu Lily and O Ming and Su Qianxi went the same way. When they got back to Wuxia, the two cars went their separate ways. When they got home, Yu Lily took a shower. Her mind was filled with plans for the picnic the next day. After the shower, Yu Lily rubbed her hair as she sat on the bed. After thinking for a long time, she said, "Oh Ming, do you think they'll think I'm a busybody? Their parents aren't worried about it, so I'm the only one doing it." However, Yu Lily was met with silence. Yu Lily turned her head, but O Ming was nowhere to be seen. "Oh Ming?" As soon as Yu Lily said that, she felt a grip around her waist. O Ming's hand circled her waist as he replied, "Yes, but you're also thinking about their future happiness. It seems like Luo Zhan has a good impression of you as a friend." "Yeah, I think so too." After O Ming said that, Yu Lily felt that the situation was even more promising. Seeing the excitement in Yu Lily's eyes, O Ming was too embarrassed to tell her that Luo Zhan treated everyone the same way. "Have you showered?" Yu Lily turned her head and looked at him. O Ming smiled and leaned over. "Yes, I have. If you don't believe me, you can smell it." "No, go away." Yu Lily pushed the towel forward and said with a look of disgust, "I still have to dry my hair. Don't come so close. I'll help you." With that, O Ming went to get the hairdryer and asked, "What's the date today?" "The 13th, Yu Lily looked at the time and nodded. "The 13th. What's the matter?" "Oh," O Ming replied. Without saying anything else, he began to blow dry Yu Lily's hair. Yu Lily found that he was a little absent-minded. When he was drying his hair, he only aimed at one spot. Yu Lily nudged him gently and asked, "What's wrong?" O Ming came back to his senses and touched her hair. It was already half dry. He shook his head and continued to help her dry her hair before putting the hairdryer away. Then, he took off his slippers and climbed onto the bed. He carried her with one arm and whispered, "It's your ovulation period these few days. Let's give it a try." Yu Lily was surprised. "How did you know?" "I just calculated it." O Ming leaned forward and kissed her on the cheek. "Remember to pay attention to your diet these few days." Asterisk 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 asterisk. The raging flames burned silently. The room was filled with charm, tenderness, and uncontrollable tenderness. Dash. Chapter 1330. She had gone to play with O Ming and Yu Lily last night, so she left the children at the old mansion. Today's activity was suitable for children. Su Qianxi got up at 6:00 and rushed to the old mansion to wake the children up. Hearing that they were going on a picnic, the children were excited. After all, it had been a while since they last went out to play. One by one, they began to dress themselves in beautiful clothes and excitedly got ready to go. Such a scene also woke up Li Jinan, who rarely went home to relax. When he got up, he saw that the children were well dressed and asked with a smile, "What are you going to do?" "Uncle." Li Jianhua saw Li Jinan and ran toward him, holding out her arms. "Hug." Li Jinan picked up his niece and asked, "Where are Daddy and Mommy going to take you to play?" To a picnic. And Auntie Lily, Uncle O Ming, Uncle Luo Zhan, and many other uncles and aunties. Oh yes, Mommy. Li Jianhua looked at Su Qianxi and said, will Uncle Lu go? I haven't seen Uncle Lu for a long time. I miss him so much. A child's words carried no harm. When the childish voice called Uncle Lu, Li Xicheng, who was sitting on the sofa, tilted his head slightly and looked over. When Su Qianxi heard that, she subconsciously looked at Li Xicheng. She knew that Li Xicheng didn't like to hear Luihan's name. Therefore, when she was at home, she would rarely mention this person. Li Jianhua didn't notice the strangeness of the adults and said, Uncle Lu used to come to play with us often. Why hasn't he come recently? Mommy, let's go play with Uncle Lu, okay? When Su Qianxi heard that, she subconsciously looked at Li Xicheng and said to her daughter, Uncle Lu has been very busy recently. He has to do business to earn money to marry a wife. When Uncle Lu is free, Mommy will let him come to see you again. Oh. The child's world was actually very simple. When she heard her mother say that, she nodded. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen didn't say anything. The two brothers looked at each other as if they had already seen through each other's eyes. Uncle, do you want to go with us? There are quite a lot of friends today. Luo Zhan and O Ming are going. Why don't you go with them? Su Qianxi suggested. You haven't had a vacation in a long time, right? It was true that Li Jinan hadn't had a vacation in a long time, but he didn't like crowded places. Even though he knew all the people who were going, it was pointless for him to go and join in the fun. Li Xicheng looked at Li Jinan's expression and knew what he was thinking. He stood up and said firmly, let's go together. At the same time, you can also help me look after my child. Li Jinan knew his brother very well. The two boys worshipped him very much. In this way, they only had the little princess by their side. Without the two burdens, the couple could do some things they liked to do. Li Jinan seemed to have seen through everything and said, all right then. Let's go together. Come, Uncle will go and get changed. Li Jianhua cheered, let's go. Long live Uncle. There was one more person in the group. The driver, Yang, drove Su Qianxi's big RV and soon arrived at the destination with the big family. Chapter 1331. Seeing Su Qianxi coming from a distance, Yu Lily looked a little excited and waved at them. Today, Yu Lily was dressed very casually, wearing a bright red sportswear, which made her white and beautiful skin look more energetic. O Ming was wearing the same men's version of sportswear. Obviously, it was a couple's outfit. Su Qianxi looked at their clothes and then looked at her own, suddenly feeling that there was too little affection between them. Couple's outfit, so beautiful. At this moment, O Ming was carrying a large black backpack. He was tall and had long legs. Standing next to Yu Lily, he looked down at her with a smile, his eyes gentle and affectionate. Su Qianxi saw them like this and felt a little emotional. How difficult it was for these two people, she had seen it all the way. Now, they were finally happy. The wedding would be held next month. At that time, the grand scene would definitely be an eye-opener for them. Yu Lily did not notice that O Ming was looking at her behind her. After waving at Su Qianxi, she turned and walked in the direction of Yi Qianqian. Behind Yi Qianqian, there was a girl who looked very young and beautiful. It seemed that she was about the same age as Yi Qianqian. At first glance, she looked very similar to Yi Qianqian. However, it was obvious that they were not the same person. The temperament was very different, and the girl looked a bit familiar. It should be a star. Su Qianxi had some impression of this girl, but Li Jinan, who ran an entertainment company, should know people in the entertainment industry. Without turning her head, Su Qianxi said to Li Jinan behind her, Uncle, who is that girl? Do you know her? However, she did not wait for Li Jinan's answer. Su Qianxi turned her head and found that Li Jinnan had already disappeared. Li Jianrui and Li Mosen disappeared together. And Li Jianxian and Li Xicheng, the father and son, came over here with 2 big bags. However, where was Li Jinnan? Su Qianxi looked around and saw him from a distance. Li Jianrui and Li Mosen were talking, one tall and one short, very harmonious. Li Jinnan and Luo Zhan did not know what they were talking about. They seemed to turn their heads inadvertently, and then their eyes were fixed. Su Qianxi saw it clearly and followed Li Jinnan's gaze. The target of his gaze, wasn't it the starlet she had wanted to ask about? The starlet also seemed to notice Li Jinnan. Su Qianxi could clearly sense that she was a little uncomfortable. Luo Zhan followed Li Jinnan's gaze and realized that he was looking in the same direction. He nudged him with his elbow and asked, "Do you know him?" "Yeah." Li Jinnan didn't look away as he replied, "This is an artist from my company." Luo Zhan was shocked. What a coincidence. Is Miss Yi an artist? He walked in the direction of Yi Qianxian and Yi Yuyu. His footsteps were steady and his demeanor natural. However, Yi Yuyu wasn't as natural. She stood where she was and forced herself to look calm. When Yi Qianxian saw Li Jinnan, she didn't expect him at all. She opened her eyes and exclaimed, "It's you. Why are you here?" However, after she said that, she immediately thought of Li Xicheng's younger brother, Su Qianxi's brother-in-law. Wasn't he? Chapter 1332. It is quite a coincidence. I didn't expect you to be in Kingstown as well. As Li Jinnan spoke, his gaze only briefly landed on Yi Yuyu. After that, his gaze didn't return to her again. Yi Qianxian smiled and replied, "I work at Eurasian Comics. Of course, I'm in Kingstown." However, Yuyu only wanted to come to Kingstown to relax. After staying in the hospital for so long, it's time to come out for a walk. Isn't that right, Yuyu? When Yi Yuyu heard that, she forced a smile and nodded her head. Li Jinnan finally turned his attention to her. He looked at her injured arm and asked, "Has it recovered?" "GM Li, it's almost healed," Yi Yuyu replied with her head lowered. Yi Yuyu felt a little uncomfortable. Yi Qianxian knew that they had a close relationship, so she could tell at a glance. Luo Zhan had always been insensitive. He looked at her and asked, "Miss Yi, is this your sister?" Yi Qianxian was happy to change the subject. She replied, "Yeah, her name is Yi Yuyu. She was the second female lead in The Lonely Swordsman. Later on, she was injured during the pressure exercise." What a pity. Luo Zhan felt a little sorry for her. What a pity. It was such a good opportunity. Let's not talk about this. Everyone, get ready. Let's go play. As he spoke, he rubbed his hands together eagerly. He put his arm around Li Jinnan's back and said, "I haven't played with you in a long time. Come on, let's do it." Li Jinnan seemed to be in a good mood. He smiled and said, "You couldn't beat me in the past. Do you think you can beat me now?" These words were obviously a naked provocation. When Luo Zhan heard that, he was enraged. In a shrill voice, he said, "Oh, you're quite proud of yourself. If I don't beat you up today, my surname isn't Luo." The two of them walked off with their arms around each other's shoulders. Yi Qianxian looked at Li Jinnan's retreating back and whispered to Yi Yuyu, "From what I see, your boss treats you really well. Why don't you dump Shen Luo and go after third young Master Li?" "What are you talking about?" Yi Yuyu bumped into her. Why would such a man like that be interested in a divorced woman? Don't overthink it. He's the boss. It's normal for him to care about his employees. He's not as dramatic as you think. Moreover, Shen Luo didn't seem to agree to a divorce at all. More importantly, she wasn't good enough for him. A man like Li Jinan was more suited for a better woman. Yi Yuyu regretted it. If she had known that Li Jinan was there, she wouldn't have listened to Yi Qianqian's advice. Li Jinan had never said anything to her, nor had he given her any hints. But, his thoughtfulness and concern always made Yi Yuyu feel a little uncomfortable. After all, there was such a ridiculous night between them. This made it difficult for Yi Yuyu to treat this man normally. Although, it was very likely that she was thinking too much. This man might be like this to everyone. Yi Yu's mind was filled with so many thoughts that she didn't notice her surroundings. Yu Lily had already brought a little girl to their side. She led the way and said, "Ursu, this is Auntie Qianqian." Li Jianyue widened her big eyes and looked at Yi Qianqian like black grapes. She obediently and sweetly greeted, "Hello, Auntie Qianqian. This is Aunt Yuyu." Chapter 1333. I don't know. Come on, let's go find your mother. Yu Lily held the little girl's hand and smiled. Yi Qianqian saw that Li Jianyue's face was somewhat similar to Su Qianxi's. She was surprised and said, "Is this Su Qianxi's daughter? Wow, she's so cute. She doesn't even post pictures on Weibo. You know, she's not on the internet either. I didn't expect this little girl to be so beautiful." Yi Qianqian squatted down and looked at Li Jianyue. She asked with a smile, "What's your name?" Li Jianyue had never been afraid of strangers. When she saw that Yi Qianqian liked her, she smiled happily and replied, "Auntie, my name is Li Jianyue. I'm 5 years old this year. Time flies." Yi Qianqian reached out to her. "Can I give you a hug?" Li Jianyue liked to be hugged by adults. When she heard Yi Qianqian's words, she immediately reached out. Yi Qianqian happily picked up the child and asked, "Lily, where is her mother?" "I don't know. I don't know where my man is." Yu Lily picked up her cell phone and called O Ming, but no one answered. The next second, Yu Lily's cell phone rang. It was Su Qianxi. "Hello, Qianqian." "Oh, okay. She's here. She's looking for her mother." "Okay, we'll go in now. Wait for us." Yu Lily quickly hung up the phone and led them into the badminton court. The sun was getting brighter. The weather was good. No matter how bright the spring sun was, it was not cruel. Su Qianxi was wearing a white sports suit today. Her long hair was tied into a ponytail. She looked youthful and energetic. When she saw Yu Lily and the others coming over, she waved at them and said, "Ursu, go play with your brothers." Li Ursu was a little unhappy when she heard that. But when she turned her head and saw that Li Mosen and Li Jianqian were also playing, the resentment on her face immediately changed, and she struggled to get off Yi Qianqian. As soon as Yi Qianqian put her down, Li Jianyue immediately ran toward Li Mosen and Li Jianqian. Brother, I want to play too." Li Jianyue's voice was very loud, and her sweet voice was very eye-catching. The adults who were playing ball turned their heads when they heard the little girl's voice. They could not help but laugh when they saw the little girl's halting footsteps. The child has grown up. Luo Zhan grabbed the ball and served it to the opposite side. "Second brother, the child is 5 years old. Do you and sister-in-law have any plans to have a second child?" Li Xicheng caught the ball and sent it back with a swing of his racket. He said, "I do have plans, but my wife doesn't want to give birth." Tsk, Luo Zhan shook his head. She must have been traumatized. When she gave birth to these two guys, sister-in-law went into the delivery room alone. At that time, if it weren't for third brother, I'm afraid sister-in-law wouldn't have been able to bear it. You heartless man. The physical strength of an otaku had always been worrying. As Luo Zhan spoke, he was already panting. Li Xicheng, on the other hand, was much calmer. Seeing him panting like a dog, Li Xicheng laughed and said, "Are you that tired?" I'm a little tired. Luo Zhan stopped and said, take a break. Li Xicheng put the racket away and went to the side to get a bottle of water. He threw it to Luo Zhan. Your mother hasn't urged you to go on a blind date recently? Luo Zhan took the water and let out a long breath. She did. I had no choice. I didn't find a suitable one. Chapter 1334. Are you going to be single like this? He also unscrewed the cap himself. Although he was asking Luo Zhan, he was looking in the direction of Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi was playing with Li Jinnan. She was wearing a sun hat and had a big smile on her face. She was playing with Li Jinnan. Luo Zhan replied, not only that, but fortunately, my mother didn't force a wife on me like your grandfather. Drinking water, Luo Zhan immediately noticed where Li Xicheng was looking. Third brother is deliberately letting her win. Of course, Li Xicheng knew that, but he didn't think it was a problem. He said, of course. Luo Zhan chuckled and looked at Li Jinnan while drinking water. Dealing with Su Qianxi, Li Jinnan was obviously at ease, but he still dropped the ball from time to time, which made Su Qianxi laugh. Brother-in-law, why are you getting weaker and weaker? Although you are busy with work, you still need to exercise. Su Qianxi tossed the badminton in her hand and shouted, watch. Li Jinnan was about to reply, but he hadn't expected her to start serving so suddenly. He couldn't help but laugh. Following that, he caught the ball without any hesitation and said, should say that you've improved too quickly. Indeed, now that second brother is back, you're in a good mood. Everything becomes better. Ha! She laughed. It's not like your second brother is practicing with me. As soon as the ball was launched, the shuttlecock missed the net and fell to the ground less than a step behind the net. Li Jinnan didn't get it, so he had to accept his fate and pick up the ball. With a helpless smile on his face, the helpless tenderness in his eyes unintentionally flowed out. It was extremely subtle, but Yi Yuyu could vaguely sense that he treated her differently. This was something that Li Jinnan had never done with her before. Although he was concerned about her, the way he looked at her was also very calm. Other than the fact that he cared a little more than an ordinary person, he didn't seem to have any special feelings for her. Su Ci, on the other hand, was obviously not the case. Because she was the stepdaughter of the Guan family, and because she had been brought up by her mother, Yi Yuyu had always been observant in the snow fox from a young age. What her uncle liked, what her mother liked, or what they didn't like or what they hated, she could always sense it immediately. At that moment, she could clearly sense Li Jinnan's emotions. It was a kind of forbearance, but it was a real emotion. Kinship? That was not all. Yi Yuyu felt as if she had discovered a huge secret. The deepest part of her heart relaxed slightly. This feeling was as if a thorn had been suddenly pulled out. This feeling of comfort was self-evident. Yi Qianqian followed Yi Yuyu's gaze and realized that Yi Yuyu was looking at Li Jinnan. Her heart leaped with joy and she asked, the more you look at him, the more handsome he looks, right? I also think he's very handsome. Yi Yuyu immediately snapped back to her senses and glanced at Yu Lily. When he realized that Yu Lily wasn't looking in his direction, he said unhappily, what are you talking about? I just happened to be looking in that direction and thinking about something. She looked at Li Jinnan and Su Qianxi and said, before second young Master Li came back, it was third young Master Li who stayed by Qianqian's side. If it weren't for third young Master Li, I'm afraid she wouldn't have survived. Therefore, it was normal for them to have some feelings for each other. This was the true meaning of time breeds affection. Chapter 1335. If that was the case, Li Jinnan was probably just wishful thinking. Or perhaps it was difficult for him to express his love. Yi Yuyu knew that. Yi Qianqian continued, it wasn't easy for Qianqian. She had to support such a big company all by herself, and she had to take care of 2 children. Oh, and her love rival's child. Love rival's child? Uh-huh. You really didn't know? It was such a big deal back then. I thought you should know. Yi Qianqian looked at Yi Yuyu as if she was a monster. Yi Yuyu shook her head. I wasn't in the country at that time. Oh. Right. Yi Qianqian suddenly remembered. After Guan Kui's incident, Yi Yuyu had been sent abroad by her stepfather to study. After thinking about it, Yi Qianqian said, back then, there was a woman who claimed to be pregnant with second young Master Li's child. She wanted to take over his position while she was pregnant. At that time, Qianqian wasn't pregnant yet, so they almost divorced. When the child with the surname Tang was born, it was discovered that he was mixed race. As Yi Qianqian spoke, she kept an eye on her surroundings. She saw Li Mosen playing in the distance and said, "Do you see that child? He's the son with the surname Tang." Yi Yuyu looked in the direction that Yi Qianqian was pointing at and saw a few children. There was a little girl, a little boy who looked similar to the little girl, and a little boy whose skin was a little too fair. She adopted her child? Yeah. I was wondering why the girl had such a big heart. After that, Tang Menjing killed a few people and almost killed this child. Sigh. How did you know? Such a thing shouldn't have been spread around, right? After all, such a thing was a little too cruel for a child to do. Yi Qianqian looked at her strangely and replied, "Of course not. I asked Lily about it a few days ago, and she told me. You shouldn't tell anyone about it. It's not good for the child." Yi Yuyu nodded her head and looked at the children who were playing. Children of 5 or 6 years old were at the age of innocence, but they had almost died at the hands of their biological mother. Would they be traumatized? Hey! After a long greeting, Yi Yuyu looked up and saw Yu Lily waving in her direction. Come and swim. There is a hot spring here. Everyone looked at Yu Lily. Luo Zhan quickly waved at her and asked, "Where's your man?" Yu Lily waved her hand and shouted, "I don't know. Isn't he with you?" Luo Zhan stood up and jokingly shouted, "Oh no, you won't be kidnapped by human traffickers, will you?" As soon as he said that, everyone laughed. Yu Lily cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "Give me back my man, you human trafficker." Luo Zhan also laughed and shouted, "Your man said he doesn't want you anymore. Don't look for him." What a silly joke. Yu Lily's throat was sore from all the shouting, so she turned around and ignored him. However, when he turned around and walked into the hot spring, he felt that something was wrong. Wherever O Ming went, he should have said a word. How come he disappeared without any sound at all? Yu Lily suddenly remembered what had happened last time. Last time, he had suddenly disappeared. After that, she heard the news that he had jumped out of the car and was hospitalized. Chapter 1336. The phone rang a few times, but no one answered. Yu Lily began to panic. She looked around and saw that the people behind her were already walking over leisurely. Among the crowd, there was everyone but O Ming. The first call had already exceeded the allotted time and automatically hung up. Yu Lily persistently called the second one, but before she could make the call, she heard a voice behind her. "Sister-in-law Oh, what are you doing?" Luo Zhan swung his racket carelessly as he walked over and said, "Are you really calling O Ming?" "Ha ha ha. I'm just kidding. Don't take it seriously." Yu Lily gave him a kick in exasperation and said, "Go away. I really don't know where O Ming went. Do you know where he is?" "How would I know?" Luo Zhan shrugged his shoulders and didn't even look at Yu Lily as he asked, "Can't you get through to him?" "I did, but no one picked up." Yu Lily frowned and looked at Luo Zhan. She realized that Luo Zhan didn't seem to care, but in fact, his eyes were full of mirth. Yu Lily became suspicious and asked, "Do you know where he is?" Luo Zhan quickly looked over and looked at her with confusion. He said, "Why are you only asking me? You can ask second brother." I said I don't know, and that means I don't know. When Yu Lily saw him like this, she became even more suspicious. Something was wrong with Luo Zhan. Yu Lily was suddenly even more certain that this guy must know where O Ming was. In this way, Yu Lily was no longer anxious. Since Luo Zhan knew, O Ming must be fine. Yu Lily hung up and stuffed the phone back into her pocket. She stretched and said, "Oh, I haven't come out to relax in a long time. Qianqian, let's go to the hot spring." Su Qianxi was drinking the water that Li Xicheng had handed over. She was in a good mood. When she heard Yu Lily say that, she directly stuffed the bottle into Li Xicheng's hand and said, "Okay. Miss Yi, come along too." "Mom, I want to go too." Li Jianyue ran over to Su Qianxi. She was so fast that it was as if she was afraid of being left behind. Su Qianxi smiled and squatted down to take her daughter into her arms. She whispered, "Let's go. Don't let Dad go. Let's sneak away." When Li Jianyue heard that, she immediately shut her mouth. She turned her head and gave Li Xicheng a mysterious look. She put her chubby little finger to her lips and said, secretly, "But." Her dark, grape-like eyes darted around. She whispered into Su Qianxi's ear, "Daddy already knows." "What should we do?" Su Qianxi asked in a low voice. When the adults heard this, they couldn't help but laugh. Li Mosen coughed softly behind her and said, "Ursu, you spoke too loudly." Li Jianyue immediately covered her mouth, pulled Su Qianxi, and said, "Mom, go, don't take them with you." Luo Zhan walked forward and gently pinched Li Jianyue's little face. He said, "Little rascal, we men have to be with men." As he spoke, he turned his head and shouted, "Come, where are the men?" Li Jianyue's eyes widened. Li Jianxian and Li Mosen immediately raised their hands and said in unison, "Here. Let's go." Luo Zhan held his head high and led the two lackeys inside. Chapter 1337. Going to a hot spring with a bunch of men? Su Qianxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Pointing at Li Xicheng, she said, "Ask your dad." Li Jianyue immediately looked at Li Xicheng and called out, "Dad." Li Xicheng calmly turned his head and looked at his daughter. His tone was gentle, but there was no room for disagreement. "No." Li Xicheng nodded. Li Jianyue was unhappy. She pouted and asked, "Why?" "If you see a man's naked body, you'll have to take responsibility." Pfft. Luo Zhan immediately spat. This guy's way of educating the child was really different. Not only Luo Zhan, but even Yu Lily felt that his words were a little strange. Li Jianyue looked at Li Xicheng with a pair of big eyes. She was a little confused and asked, "What do you mean by taking responsibility?" "By marrying them home." "Huh?" Li Jianyue's mouth fell open. "Then, as long as you see the boy naked, you have to take responsibility?" The adults around almost burst out laughing, but Li Xicheng looked serious. Facing his daughter's expression, he nodded without any sense of guilt. Li Jianyue was a little flustered. She rubbed her hands on her clothes a few times and said carefully, "Then. I've seen both brother and brother Mosen naked. Do I have to marry them?" "Ha ha 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 ha." Luo Zhan laughed out loud and sat on the side with one arm around Li Mosen and the other around Li Jianxian. The little guy has a good future ahead of him. He actually wants 2 husbands. Li Jianyue was baffled by Luo Zhan's smile. In the end, her gaze fell on Li Xicheng. Li Xicheng said calmly, "They are your brothers, so you don't need to be responsible. However, for other things that have nothing to do with you, you need to be responsible. For example, if you saw your uncle Luo Zhan, you need to be responsible. Li Jianhua didn't really understand. Why does Uncle Luo want me to be responsible? Yu Lili cut in and said, because your uncle Luo Zhan can't get married. You have to be careful. Hey, don't teach children bad things. Luo Zhan was not happy. When Li Xiqing heard what Yu Lili said, he looked at Li Jianhua seriously and said, your Auntie Lily is right. Then, if I don't take responsibility, what will happen? Li Xiqing said, that is acting like a hooligan. In ancient times, people like you would be drowned in a pig cage. Ah. Li Jianhua covered her mouth. Does it mean throwing a bamboo cage and a big rock into the sea? Yes. Li Jianhua was scared out of her wits. She hugged Su Qianxi's neck with her chubby hands. She pouted and said, Mom, let's go. Su Qianxi was holding her daughter. Seeing this, she was amused and distressed. She gave Li Xiqing a reproachful look and said, look at how scared the child is. Li Xiqing didn't think there was anything wrong with his words at all. He said, children need to know these things from a young age. You guys are the same. You can't just look at other girls, and you can't just get close to them. Do you understand? These words were naturally directed at Li Mosen and Li Jianxian. The two little fellows had different expressions. Li Mosen nodded in agreement. Li Jianxian asked, what if another girl approaches us on purpose? Hearing that, Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows slightly, looking a little surprised. You? Chapter 1338. Seeing his blushing face, Li Xiqing felt a bit funny and couldn't help curling his lips. She went forward and picked him up with one hand. She gently patted his little butt and said, we'll talk about it when you grow up. Li Jianxian struggled unwillingly and shouted, Dad, I'm not a child anymore. Li Xiqing ignored his words and walked inside with him on his shoulder. Li Mosen looked at Li Jianxian enviously, but he did not slow down his pace. Luo Zhan could clearly see Li Mosen's expression. He whistled and took a step forward. Mimicking Li Xiqing, he lifted the little guy up and said, let's go. Li Mosen was shocked at first, but then he jumped up excitedly and said, Uncle Luo Zhan, surpass them. Okay. Luo Zhan strode inside and shouted exaggeratedly, Yo-ho! Let's play. When she saw that the men had finished running, Li Jianhua hugged her mother's neck tightly and asked, Mom, is what Dad said true? Hearing that, Su Qianxi smiled and said, you should listen to Daddy. Neither Daddy nor Mommy will harm you. Oh. Li Jianhua replied, not really understanding. After the women went in, they took a shower, changed their clothes, and soaked in the hot spring together. He asked the attendant for a swimming ring and asked the little fellow to use the hot spring as a swimming pool. Li Jianhua was 4 or 5 years old this year and had been fed by Li Xiqing into a little fatty. Yu Lili held the little guy and couldn't bear to part with him. She waved at Ursu and said, Ursu, come here. The little guy swam toward Yu Lili, smiling and rolling in a circle, water splashing everywhere. It was obvious that Yi Qianqian and Yi Yuyu liked the little girl very much. The few of them quickly became a group. After soaking for a while, the little guy knew that it was time to leave. He said, Mommy, let's go play with Big Brother and the others. Su Qianxi held her daughter and chuckled. Do you miss your brothers? Li Jianhua pouted and said, my brothers aren't playing with me. They must be bored. Sigh, they're always doing boring things. I can't stand them. Yi Yuyu chuckled and asked, for example? They always like to dismantle the car and then reassemble it. You don't like it? I like to push the cart, but I don't like to put it on. It's boring. Su Qianxi smiled and picked her up from behind. The little girl suddenly came out of the water and squealed, flapping her hands and feet excitedly. Ah, Mommy, one more time. It's so fun. one more time? Su Qianxi threw her into the water, and the little girl screamed again, her smile crisp and clean. All right, stop playing, Yu Lily said. She went up and wrapped the towel around Li Jianyue. You'll catch a cold. Come up. Li Jianyue was so excited that Yu Lily almost couldn't hold her. Ursu, don't move. The floor is very slippery. Don't let Auntie fall. Su Qianxi's voice was a little harsh, and Li Jianyue immediately became obedient and stayed motionless in Yu Lily's arms. Seeing that the little guy was behaving, Su Qianxi was relieved and climbed up the stairs. Chapter 1339. Such a scene frightened them to death. Yi Yuyu immediately held Su Qianxi from behind, and Yi Qianqian squatted down to steady her. Yu Lily was also shocked and shouted, Qianqian, are you okay? Li Jianyue didn't see what Su Qianxi had done. When she saw the adult's reaction, she was inexplicably shocked. She shouted, Mom. Su Qianxi closed her eyes, feeling a little weak. After a while, he shook his head and said, I'm fine. Maybe I'm a little dizzy from soaking in the water for too long. Let's go. Are you sure you're okay? Come up and rest for a while. Yi Yuyu helped her up and frowned. Sis, help me get a towel. Oh. Yi Qianqian was quick. After wrapping the towel around Su Qianxi's body, Yi Yuyu helped Su Qianxi onto the shore. Su Qianxi felt much better. She pushed Yi Yuyu's hand away and said, much better. Thank you. Don't tell me you're anemic. If you are anemic, you will feel dizzy from time to time. Yu Lily frowned and said, I had this condition before when I was anemic. I'll go get you some sugar water. No, Lily, you're exaggerating. I'll be fine after a short rest. She stood up and stretched. Don't tell my husband later. I don't want him to worry. Yu Lily looked at her and held the baby without saying anything. Okay, let's go out. Ursu, are you hungry? Su Qianxi reached out to Ursu. Let mommy hug you. Auntie's arms must be sore. Li Ursu hugged the towel on her body and pouted. She did not extend her hand and said, Mom is not feeling well. I don't want you to carry me. I can walk on my own. Auntie, please put me down. Yu Lily absolutely adored the little girl. She put her down and wrapped the towel around her as she asked, Are you feeling sorry for mommy? Li Jianyue pouted and said, It's not good if mommy isn't feeling well. As she spoke, she turned her head and tugged at Su Qianxi's hand. Mommy, let's go look for Daddy. He had to tell his father. Only their father would take good care of their mother. She and her brothers were too young to take care of their mother. Moreover, the aunties were all outsiders. Only family members would take good care of their own. Although Li Jianyue was young, she knew it very well. A pair of big black grape-like eyes rolled around. Holding his mother's palm, the little fellow had already secretly prepared what to say to his father. Su Qianxi looked down at her daughter and knew what she was thinking. She warned, I'm fine. I'm not uncomfortable. Don't tell Dad, do you hear me? Oh. The little guy pouted, looking a little dejected. Yu Lily went forward to take the little girl away and threw her a set of clothes. Li Jianyue clumsily began to put them on. Although her movements weren't very nimble, she didn't wear the wrong clothes. She even tidied herself up beautifully in front of the mirror. As soon as she went out, Li Jianyue saw her father's tall figure. She pouted and ran over with her short legs, feeling wronged. Daddy. Li Si's eyes softened when he saw his daughter. He squatted down and took her from her. Dad, let me tell you. Li Jianyue was about to say something, but she immediately saw Su Qianxi's warning look and immediately closed her mouth. I can't tell Daddy. Li Jianyue's eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Li Jianxian and said, "Older brother. Let me tell you, mommy almost fell by the pool just now." You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.